everyone to the dragons next time. But so yes, as we think about what a lot of people have called concentration risk in this marketplace, is that a risk?
About it.
Well, it's not a concern to me because these companies are earning a lot of money and they have a tremendous amount of cash flow. And they also basically have internal investment banking departments where they are able to find small companies that they can leverage up in their businesses. I think it's one of the reasons that mid-cap, small and mid-cap managers have been frustrated because anytime that they put in the next Microsoft in their portfolio, it gets
exactly. Well, how about for the small and mid-cap investors out there? Presumably lower interest rates should help those companies. Is that enough?
I think we can see it in the way things trade. Whenever there's expectations that the Fed will lower rates, the Russell 2000 does better. The problem is the Russell 2000 has something like 40% of companies that don't have any earnings. Yeah. That's a little bit of a problem. But when people are excited and risk on, they're willing to buy those kind of companies. But my preference is I call them the impressive 493.
Yeah.
Everybody's focusing on the Magnificent Seven. There's 493 companies in the S&P 500 that are benefiting from what the Magnificent Seven are creating. These companies, the Magnificent Seven, aren't going to continue to do well unless the products really do improve productivity for the 493. I think that's happening, and I do expect that the market will broaden out.
What is our Federal Reserve going to do here? I think the market's saying December, we're going to get a rate cut. After that, not sure.
Well, the Fed really frustrates me for the past few years. Every now and then I've written that I would be more than happy to do what the Fed does for half the price. And my condition is continue if they allow me to work from home. I wouldn't do regulation or supervision, just macroeconomic policy. But a year ago when they started cutting rates, they're down 150.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. Also, make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can also follow me on many different social media channels. Please help support the work that I do by going to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you can also donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. Let's talk about some of the products that I offer to help to improve your health and slow down the aging process. And this is a protocol that I do daily. Please go to my store and get the Cleanse or the Max 35. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. Cleanse is 35 parts per million. Now, when you take the teaspoon a day, you're swishing in your mouth and gargling. And you're gargling for about 20 to 30 seconds, and you swallow. What this will do is improve the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, help with your mucosal barrier, improve that mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. When you do this, it's boosting up your immune system. Do this every day, especially during the winter season. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day, and then go back to your maintenance dose once everything's all clear. But do this every day. A teaspoon of Cleanse or a teaspoon of Max 35 every day, right? I've been doing this for over 5 years as part of my anti-aging protocol and boosting up the immune system. Some great products that I have that are perfect for gifts for individuals during the holiday season are the structural nano silver soaps. Now these soaps are very high quality, help with the health of your skin. You can get it in lavender, peppermint, also in charcoal tea tree and lemongrass. All right, so please go to my store, get the structural nano silver soaps, get a few bars for your household, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount 5. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, with that said, let's start listening into the market news here. It's going to be somewhat of a slow trading day, but let's listen into Bloomberg.
You're just a middle child.
Yep.
They're expensive.
They are
Yeah.
expensive.
It's outrageous.
If you get a dog, make sure you get health insurance.
Sure. Yeah, well, with cattle feed, it's hopeless. Ed Yardeni, thank you for joining us worldwide today. Just a real treat after Thanksgiving. Again, worldwide on Bloomberg Television, on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
Some people travel to see the world. I travel to question the forces that shape entire nations. Wow, is it possible? My name is Professor Hannah Fry. I want to meet the people with unexpected stories to tell and dig up the peculiar and wonderful treasures that reveal what a country is made of.
Let's pivot over to some of the breaking news. I want to talk about Trump and the guard being shot.
His tax, clean my retainers. If you wear a retainer every night like I do, you know how hard it is to keep it truly fresh and clean.
Seconds before I went on, right now, I heard that Sarah Beckstrom of West Virginia, one of the guardsmen that we're talking about, highly respected, young, magnificent person, started service in June of 2023, outstanding in every way. She's just passed away. She's no longer with us. She's looking down at us right now. Her young man is fighting for his life. He's in very bad shape. He's fighting for his life.
Breaking news this morning, President Trump confirming the death of 20-year-old West Virginia National Guard member Sarah Beckstrom last night while addressing service members. She and 24-year-old Guardsman Andrew Wolf were ambushed and shot just blocks from the White House on Wednesday. The alleged shooter, Afghan national Ramanullah Lakhanwal, came to the United States after Biden's disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal and did work with the CIA, according to Director John Ratcliffe. The two National Guards members were both sworn in less than 24 hours before the attack. President Trump now announcing his administration will permanently pause migration from all third world countries and remove anyone who is, quote, not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country. Joining me now, New York Congressman Nick Langworthy. Congressman, great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Want to get to your reaction on this news out of Washington and the steps that President Trump is taking to make our country safer.
Well, Jackie, my heart breaks for Sarah's family. We're praying for Andrew that he pulls through and makes a full recovery. I mean, this is a epic tragedy. An attack on one member of our service is an attack on our whole nation. And we need to have these soldiers and their memories in our thoughts, in our prayers, especially at this moment. But this is just emblematic of the immigration policies of Joe Biden, which were an epic disaster. There was a lack of vetting, the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, and as the Biden administration tried to paper their way out of that, they botched the asylum and reentry of Afghans coming into this country. I mean, 76,000 people were brought here. Now we know that this murderer was tied to military organizations and did work with the CIA there, but there was no vetting. I mean, this isn't something where you could have just fingerprinted people and taken their headshot. You needed to do real investigations before you brought these people stateside. Mm-hmm. And these families have paid a price. Our nation has paid a price and continues to pay the price for these disastrous Biden policies, and I have full faith that President Trump and his administration will do their full due diligence to get all of the facts, have the complete investigation. I somehow doubt that this man acted alone, mm-hmm. But I will await the results of the investigation, and I know Congress will be very active with this going forward. But the president has taken immediate steps. And it's very necessary to freeze all incoming immigration, based on these policies. And what has happened since January 20th is reset the paradigm for the United States of America, that we're not going to be a revolving door and allowing anyone in here not knowing what their intentions are. And clearly this man had murder in his heart.
Yeah. I want to switch gears for a moment, Congressman, and talk about President Trump and the Affordable Care Act subsidies. He's now saying that extending them may be necessary as the enrollment deadline looms for millions of Americans that will see their premiums skyrocket. Watch this.
Frequently you extend those subsidies,
I'd rather not. Somebody said, I want to extend it for 2 years. I don't want to extend it for 2 years. I'd rather not extend them at all. And maybe some kind of an extension may be necessary to get something else done. Because the Unaffordable Care Act has been a disaster. It's a disaster.
So he doesn't really support extending them for the sake of extending them, but he realizes that it might be part of a larger view of trying to accomplish things in Washington. Congressman, can you see this extension happening?
No, I agree with President Trump, and I salute him for his realistic leadership here. I mean, I think we come out of this shutdown knowing that the politics is not 50% plus one anymore. It's 60 votes. If we're going to keep the government open, if we are going to have a real conversation on reforming Obamacare, which is wildly broken and has failed at every promise that Barack Obama and leaders then in Congress, when it was passed, that was before my time, that they made. They said that you'd be able to keep the care that you had, that premiums would go down. They have exploded, and we have given record profits to insurance companies. I don't really want to see these subsidies go forward because I think it's just shoveling more money at a broken problem. But President Trump is very realistically leading on this situation. We need to have bipartisan cooperation to move forward on government operations and healthcare. Our margins are ridiculously close in both the Senate and the House, especially the House. And we're going to need cooperation across the aisle. So in order to get to that moment, I think that the president has laid out and will lay out a plan very soon as to what that is. I mean, members that I serve with that want to have an ideological solution here are just wildly unrealistic. We're going to probably have to extend this for some period of time and create new safeguards and off-ramps and eliminate abuses in these extensions, because they certainly have not led to lower premiums.
Right, and that's important. The extension that the president is talking about would have parameters to make sure some of those things you discussed were incorporated. Congressman, I just have a quick minute left with you, but I want to ask about your landmark Energy Choice Act. It's officially passed out of the House Energy Subcommittee. It's a major victory for New Yorkers and a critical step towards blocking Governor Kathy Hochul's statewide natural gas ban for homes and businesses. The bill prohibits state and local governments from banning certain sources of energy while safeguarding Americans' freedom to choose the most affordable and reliable energy sources. Congressman, the bill is now heading to the full committee for consideration. Are you confident that it will pass?
We have incredible support. We just reached our 135th co-sponsor of this bill. I mean, to have virtually a third of Congress in the House supporting this bill. We have a companion bill in the U.S. Senate. This is a very necessary piece of legislation. Energy is interstate commerce. We need to stop these radical blue states from interrupting our energy ecosystem in this country. It's a matter of life and death for my constituents that in cold and snow events, when the power gets knocked out, they could freeze to death in their homes. And Kathy Hochul doesn't understand this. She just wanted to get to the farthest, greenest, leftist point that she could in her ideology as she was looking to avoid a primary.
Yeah.
This is not about politics. This is about taking care of people and not putting them in a dangerous position. So we're going to pass it out of the full committee next week when we go back to Washington, and then I won't rest until we get this across the president's desk.
Okay. Congressman Nick Langworthy, thank you so much for being here this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie.
This assembly line is about to shut down. This fighter jet won't get off the ground. The satellite won't ever make it to space. All real possibilities. Not because America doesn't know how to build these things anymore, but because the resources we require to build them are controlled by our enemies. which countries are going to dominate the 21st century, chances are whoever controls the most of these big dumb rocks.
We're going to start with the shooting of 2 National Guardsmen just blocks from the White House in what officials are now calling a brazen targeted attack.
Seconds before I went on, right?
We begin with Madeline Rivera, who is live in Washington, D.C., with the very latest on the tragedy that is rocking our nation's capital. Hi, Maddie.
Hi, good morning, Carly. The president sharing the sad news that 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom has passed away after an alleged gunman ambushed her and another Guard member on Wednesday.
Just seconds before I went on, right now, I heard that Sarah Beckstrom of West Virginia, one of the guardsmen that we're talking about, highly respected, young, magnificent person, started service in June of 2023, outstanding in every way. She's just passed away. She's no longer with us. She's looking down at us right now. The young man is fighting for his life. He's in very bad shape. He's fighting for his life.
The family of 24-year-old Andrew Wolf is asking for prayers. The death of Beckstrom means the suspect, 29-year-old Ramanella Lockenwall, will likely face upgraded charges. Here's the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Janine Pirro, talking about that.
We are praying that they survive and that the highest charge will not have to be murder in the first degree. But make no mistake, if they do not, that will certainly be the charge.
Lockenwall came into the U.S. in 2021. He was granted asylum this spring. The administration is calling into question the vetting process for Afghan refugees, but Lockenwall worked with the CIA in Kandahar, Afghanistan, serving in an elite counterterrorism unit operated by the agency. As a member of the Zero unit, he would have gone through a vigorous screening process. Afghan evac says that includes biometric screening, biographic checks, and in-person interviews. So the president is doubling down, saying, I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by sleeping Joe Biden's auto pen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States. The president says he will be ending federal benefits for non-citizens, denaturalizing migrants who he says undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who poses a security risk.
Okay, Madeline Rivera, live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in former Assistant FBI Director Chris Swecker. Chris, thank you so much for joining us as we talk about this tragic turn of events. And obviously, there are a lot of questions when it comes to this suspect, who, as Maddie was just laying out, worked for this CIA-backed military unit during the war in Afghanistan, and was living in Washington State with his wife and 5 children. So he had a family unit. He was not a loner. A lot of questions over why and how this could have happened. When you look at his background, what do you think?
Well, let's start with the premise that Afghanistan in the post-Biden withdrawal era is a terrorist haven. I mean, Al-Qaeda is still there. ISIS is still there. There's actually battling it out in and around the area where this shooter came from. So we know that this is a problem area, and this is an area where if you're going to bring people in, and apparently over 70,000 Afghan refugees were resettled very quickly, you darn well better vet these people in a way that gives you confidence that they're not still affiliated with some type of terrorist organization or in touch with them. So I get the sense that once they got here, there wasn't a whole lot of other vetting or monitoring that took place after they got here. And here's a guy that was settled in Washington State with his 5 kids, was given the asylum and shelter of this country and all the rights and all the privileges. And then look what he does, a heartbreaking loss of this young National Guardsman who is such a patriot from the state of West Virginia, volunteered to work in the district. So this is going to cause a real hard look at this asylum program and others, I understand, and that's one positive thing.
Well, on that note, a lot has transpired overnight when it comes to vetting and immigration. The president had previously said that there would be a review of all asylum cases and green cards issued under President Biden. And now it's been announced that there's going to be a permanent pause on immigration from what the administration is describing third world countries. I mean, this announcement is obviously going to be met with some criticism from certain members of Congress. And elected leaders. But what do you think is a pause in immigration? What is needed to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again?
I don't think it's a.
Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst, he said modern people don't see God because they don't look low enough. That's what we're thinking about for the rest of your life.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I mean, when Trump did this in his first administration, he met with a lot of criticism. That doesn't stop him. I think it's needed. I mean, during the Biden administration, 17, 18 million people came to this country. Most of them illegally, without vetting. We got all the gotaways. So it's impossible that terrorists and terrorist organizations have not infiltrated into the United States. So yeah, I think it's a good time to pause and get caught up on these people. You know, so many of them, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them are criminals or would-be terrorists coming from countries that you can't vet. They don't keep criminal records there. You can't talk to anybody about them. They're just they're ghosts as they come in. And there's an underground society out there in many of our cities like Dearborn and Minneapolis and other places where we just don't know who's in this country.
Yeah, and when you look back at the withdrawal from Afghanistan and think about those plane loads filled with people, it was a situation where you could simultaneously feel very bad for the people on board those planes and also deeply worried about the fact that all of those people are coming from an adversarial nation that we were just at war with and we're ultimately going to end up in this country. But when you look at this particular suspect, he seemed on paper to be like somebody that any administration would want to grant asylum to because of that severe vetting process that he went through while he was working for this CIA-backed military unit during the war. So could this have been prevented?
I mean, anything that's predictable is preventable. And in this case, I think it is predictable that someone that came from a terrorist hotbed country, no matter, and I'm a little skeptical of the level of vetting itself because, where are the records? I mean, in Afghanistan, there's nothing to look at. And, he did serve with a unit backed by the CIA, but I'm just very skeptical of the level of vetting and in particular, the follow-up that took place after they got here. Who are they in touch with? They should be like a parolee. They got to check in about once a month and get updated on what's going on with them. Now, I'm not, maybe that this person escaped any type of ground radar, if you will. But I think we're going to find, like every other mass shooter in this country, that's conducted an act like this, that they were flashing red and nobody said anything about it.
That's a great point, Chris. And, we don't know what exactly went wrong, but something certainly did. And when you think about these two victims, Sarah Beckstrom, she was just 20 years old, which means that she was just 15 or 16 years old during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, she was a kid. She was just a teenager when that took place. And when you think about Andrew Wolf, he played varsity baseball in high school, and his friends are describing him as genuinely one of the nicest people you could ever meet. Just really quickly, as we wrap things up here, your reflections on these two individuals and the type of person it takes to go into the National Guard and serve our nation in this way.
Yeah, I served alongside them in Iraq in 2003. The young lady was from an MP unit. She was trained as an MP. And the other young man, I mean, he's 4 years older than my grandson. I can't imagine the heartbreak of this loss. And it takes a special kind of patriot from places like West Virginia, the heartland of America, that volunteer for military service these days. They want to go help others. They want to do something meaningful and serve their country. God bless them. I think there's a special place, up there in heaven for her. And I think this whole nation needs to get behind, what they're trying to do in our nation's capital, the one place where we ought to be safe.
Heartbreak is most certainly the correct word. We're a nation in mourning right now, and I just hope that these two families feel that as we all grieve together. Former Assistant FBI Director Chris Wecker, we thank you so much for joining us this morning. We thank you very much.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Here's what nobody's telling you about the new bearskin hoodie. This fleece is sick. It's made from 340 GSM of bearskin fleece, which
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, and detoxify your body. When you're detoxifying your body and bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to be able to recover after a workout quicker. You're going to also help with your cardiovascular health, because by bringing down inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. And bringing down inflammation at the brain level is going to help to protect your neurons. Because if you have chronic inflammation around neurons, the myelin sheath starts to degrade and the neurons don't perform as well. Super important to take every day, detoxify your body, bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals and slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, help with your cardiovascular health and your brain function. And take zeolite. Zeolite takes 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water. This will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take it every day. And by doing that, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite.
Breaking overnight, the ambush-style shooting of National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. has taken another tragic turn. One of those Guard members has died, the other still fighting for his life. President Trump announcing that 20-year-old Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom died from her injuries on Thanksgiving. He called her an incredible person who was outstanding in every way. New images from overnight of law enforcement officers lining the streets for the transfer of her body. Beckstrom's former boyfriend spoke to CNN and said she had a huge heart and would do anything for anyone. The other wounded Guard member, a 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, remains hospitalized and is in critical condition. We're also learning more about the suspect in custody, a 29-year-old Afghan national. He arrived in the United States in 2021 on a resettlement program after working with the CIA in Afghanistan, helping American troops. President Trump, in the wake of the shooting, says the U.S. will, quote, permanently pause migration from all third world countries. He also says the U.S. will re-examine all green cards issued to people from what the administration calls 19 countries of concern. CNN's Betsy Klein joining us now live from Washington this morning. What is the latest on this investigation?
Well, Sarah, an interagency investigation is now underway to determine exactly how this horrific tragedy could have happened, while the Trump administration, meanwhile, is ramping up its aggressive immigration policies. We know that this suspect is an Afghan national who came to the United States in 2021. He applied for asylum in 2024, and it was granted under the Trump administration in April of this year. And we've also learned that the suspect worked with U.S. forces, including the CIA, starting in 2011. A U.S. official tells CNN that he was vetted by intelligence agencies and clean on all checks. The question now of his pathway to violence is going to be a major target for investigators. Now, officials say it's still too soon to say what the motive is, but President Trump, as he addressed troops on Thanksgiving, offering his own speculation. Listen.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. That's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens soon.
Now, within hours of this shooting, the president moved to justify an even more intense immigration crackdown. The director of United States Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that at the president's direction, he was ordering the re-examination of all green cards issued to people from countries of concern. That includes about 19 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Venezuela, among many others. President last night also calling for what he described as reverse migration. In a lengthy post to social media, he wrote, quote,
I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States. We have, of course, asked the White House and State Department for clarity on what countries that would impact. Attorney General Pamela Bondi, meanwhile, says that the Justice Department will do everything in their power to seek the death penalty for this suspect.
All right, Betsy Klein, thank you so much for your reporting for us. And over to you, Brad.
Thank you, Sarah. Joining me now is CNN Senior National Security Analyst, Juliet Kayyem. Juliet, great to have you here with us. First, as we think about the investigation, the radius is extremely wide, including the path of travel to commit the deadly act. What do we know about progress thus far and the resources that need to be mobilized for this type of scale?
Well, it's going to have sort of two nexus points. One is going to be in Washington State, sort of his ties, who he was living with, where he was living, family, contacts. Was there a network that was supporting him? Then, of course, in D.C., how long was he there? Why did he choose this group of National Guard members? And then, of course, there's the linkage between the two. Where did he stop? Who may he have been in contact with? Was he calling anyone abroad? So it's going to be extensive in that sense. What's the good news in this tragedy is it's a knowable suspect who's had ties to the United States essentially for most of his life, between his work with the CIA or with the United States in Afghanistan, through at least 3 vetting processes to get his amnesty status, asylum status, and then, of course, whatever ties he had with family and friends where he was living.
And so, as information piles up, what does a typical breakthrough moment look like in the effort to establish a motive?
Well, so it's in. Well, so it's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot because he's a suspect who we don't normally have suspects who have such ties with the United States. I mean, in other words, when we have a terror or violent incident like this, it's someone either here who has no contact with the U.S. or with U.S. authorities, or someone who comes in from abroad. This is someone who was vetted at least by the CIA or the National Counterterrorism Center, was vetted when he came over, when Kabul fell in Afghanistan. And then once again, when he's granted amnesty, look, there's a lot of politics behind this. I think we just need to step outside of that and say either the vetting process was bad, missed something key, or the radicalization process was fast, that between the time he received amnesty a couple months ago and now, something happened. So investigators are going to look at some trauma in his life, something that happened in Afghanistan that he blamed the United States for.
Juliet Kayyem, thank you so much for taking the time, breaking this down this morning.
So in terms of where things stand this morning, there are some questions about specifically all these countries, right, that the president has referred to, which he calls, quote, third world.
Before we continue with CNN, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this foundation of the protocol to slow down the aging process. Get the multivitamin. This multivitamin is easy to digest, and it will have the cofactors for enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly and help with the tissues, and therefore your body will be in homeostasis. Now, also take the probiotic. I have it in a veggie cap form and a powder form. This is the powder form. These are the foundational pieces for the anti-aging protocol. Now, with this foundation, by taking the probiotic, you're going to improve your gut biome, your energy absorption will improve, your metabolism will improve, your immune system will improve at the gut level, and the communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain will improve. You will be able to sleep better. You'll get rid of brain fog. You'll be able to get into cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep that will help to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate memory, and to be well rested. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotic, also the multivitamin that's easy to digest. That's the foundation. Then the first pillar of this foundation is to take the cleanse or max 35 to boost up the immune system. Second pillar, C60, to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, to bring down inflammation, to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. And to take Boomer Boost to rev up your metabolism and your energy levels. You take that as a core protocol, and you're going to see major results in slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last, and you're going to need that free gift. Now, get the probiotic and the multivitamin. Very high quality. Take it every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Trees. When we look at the reexamination process, there is also, Eugene, there is a concern about focusing too much on the country and what the ripple effect could be for those who are here in the country who are not a threat. How do you see this playing out?
Well, there will be a real issue that we've already seen risen by Afghan communities and the associations that welcome and help resettle refugees. There's a real concern about keeping Americans and immigrants safe, how the Trump administration goes about doing that without harming and discriminating against those who have come here to actually be, as he would label it, an asset to the U.S. isn't yet clear. There's some concern that he may not be able to do that in a way that is fair, but he hasn't detailed his immigration plan yet in terms of how he's going to keep Americans safe. And I assume that there will be pressure on him to clarify that.
Malik, the president, and these are the president's words here, said the suspect went cuckoo. There are questions about what may have happened in the wake of that asylum being granted earlier this year. How do you anticipate looking into what changed perhaps for the suspect, what may have changed for the suspect is going to impact this investigation into thousands, tens of thousands of others?
Well, it seems to be very clear that there was obviously a relationship that the United States had with this particular guy. And the only thing that we could think of really at this point is to say that at some point he became radicalized. So why did he become radicalized? We really don't know the answer to that question. But the fact that he particularly targeted National Guard troops here in Washington, D.C., and I believe, I may be getting it wrong here, but I don't think that he's a resident of even the DMV area. So what was it about the National Guard? The only thing that I could see is that because of the conversation that many people have been having about the National Guard here, not just in Washington, D.C., but elsewhere around the country. I think that's the only thing that I can think of that factored into why he would come to Washington, D.C. and shoot two National Guard troops. It's the conversation that we've been having about National Guard in the areas, much like here in Washington.
Right. And again, we don't know yet. Of course, it's important to stress we do not know what the motive is behind this. So much still needs to come out in that investigation. Danielle, the president very quickly, in the wake of this, saying he wanted to add an additional 500 National Guard troops to the district. Of course, this is all coming amid, right? And then shortly after that, we had the emergency motion that was filed because a judge had ruled last week that the initial deployment of those troops back in August was actually illegal. As all of this comes into play, there have been security concerns raised about these National Guard members by a number of folks, former intelligence officials and former military who I spoke with, certainly in the wake of this on Wednesday night, said they were concerned that those 500 additional troops could become targets. How much is the administration addressing those concerns?
The administration, from the very beginning, Erica, has defended its decision to have these National Guard troops in the DMV area. And the whole point of it, and if you remember, let's go back to what happened in August when President Donald Trump said that it was time to clean up DC. And that was the effort that he made to call these troops to Washington and, of course, try to keep them here as long as possible. We are going to see an extension of that now that he's called for 500 more troops to come to Washington, D.C. It's going to be potentially an escalation of what we've already seen, seeing these troops, a militarized D.C., as it's been the past couple of now months since they've arrived to D.C. But look, it's important to make clear that Trump, of course, defending his decision to have them here, and of course, believing that this could be a solution to have additional troops, that image of the National Guard, militarized DC to prevent further violence, but it also could initiate more violence. It's unclear what could happen going forward, Erica.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words, create your brand, your opportunity.
Oh, the managers. Our next guest will give us his insights on holiday retail and the state of the consumer. Joining us now, Nate Forbes, managing partner of the Forbes company, who owns, develops, and manages high-end shopping centers in Florida and Michigan. So the story that we get, Nate, is that you're okay. You're on the upper part of the K-shaped economy. Give us an idea of what you're seeing in your malls when it comes to the higher income consumer.
Yeah, you know what, Steve? The higher end's really held firm. And I think the scarcity of product on the higher end is what's driving our retail sales. And those with the highest levels of income are continuing to shop. They're showing stability in the marketplace. They're showing a drive and a need to consume and invest in material pieces that will stay in their closet and really stand the test of time. So it's been very resilient.
I want to stop you, Nate, because this whole idea of not having enough product, what's going on with that? When in America did we never have enough product?
You know what? I think it's a balance between the retail brands and the stores. And I think some of it is done to increase prices. So you see a little bit of an upswing in driving an increase of prices, which a lot of that has been borne by the consumer. But it's not hurting brands like Chanel and Hermes that are not so widely distributed, Steve. And they really try to limit their distribution and they try to create that scarcity. And that's what allows them to drive prices, and the consumers that follow those goods and collect those goods have to have them at any cost.
What can you tell us, Nate? Because we had a nice conversation in the last hour that luxury is not driven strictly by wealthy people, but also by aspirational people who want to trade up and want something nicer for themselves. What's happening with that cohort of shopper right now?
You know, I've said for years, the Gap shopper of today is the Gucci shopper of tomorrow. And I think that aspirational shopper really drives and really works hard and wants to spend a lot of their disposable income on having high-end product, whether that's product with labels or that's product that goes down the runway or tunnel walks. And they're really driven by the aspirational consumer that believes that if you follow the social media post and follow what's hot and what's new, that you're going to be with the latest trends. And that's what they're displaying today on their backs.
Nate, at the end of the day, you can talk retail all you want, but if you own a mall, you're a real estate guy. And if you're a real estate guy, you're a rates guy. So tell me about the outlook when it comes to debt and rates and how much all of that matters for you in terms of financings and refinancings.
No, I think it matters a lot, Steve. I mean, we watch the debt markets every day. And I think right now where we are with the short curve and the long curve, the 10-year curve, I think we'll be within a band of 50 to 75 basis points of that for the next couple of years. I think you might see a couple ticks down in 2026. And I think all of those that have retail or residential or commercial coming due, we plan ahead, we look at our long-term debt expirations, and we try to finance within a band that will allow us to continue to reinvest in our assets, invest in our consumers, invest in our projects and properties to make sure we're at the highest end and the highest level of retail shopping centers across the country.
Nate, it's Robert Frank here. The word of the year in luxury seems to be experiences, with all this money shifted from things and status goods to experiences. I know you try to create experiences at all of your malls, but what I'm seeing when I talk to LVMH, Kering, Richemont, all the big luxury companies is they want fewer stores, but they want big flagship stores that have cafes, they have special pieces, they have VIP rooms. They build these sort of fewer stores into luxury experiences. Ultimately, do you see that sort of smaller footprint by these luxury companies hurting malls like yours?
Well, I would tell you this. First of all, I think when luxury was coming out of COVID, luxury expanded beyond their boundaries. And now they're starting to peel that back. So they're looking, number one, at all the gateway cities where they can have freestanding flagship stores in downtown areas. Number two, they'll go to the best regional shopping centers outside of those areas as their next strategy for growth. So if you're in the top 50 shopping centers in America, brick and mortar shopping centers, not downtown areas, top 35 to 50, you're in a good spot because those luxury consumers are depending less and less on department stores and more on creating their own experience in a way to touch the consumer, develop those relationships, and develop loyalty with their consumer base.
I honestly think that it doesn't really apply to New York because you have that Westfield Mall in Lower Manhattan by the Freedom Tower. It doesn't do so well. And the shops in the Oculus, they don't do that well. They get a lot of foot traffic, but it's just like, who's actually buying? Compared to the high cost of leasing the space. So, no, I disagree with them. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this stack. This is the third pillar of my anti-aging protocol. You can take it separately, each individual one separately, or just take this stack or add it to the overall core protocol. All right. But this is going to slow down the aging process, help with your immune system, and help with your cardiovascular system. Now, ashwagandha root will help to bring down cortisol levels and to help to control your blood glucose levels. That's super important because by bringing down inflammation and helping your vascular system, you're going to reduce plaque formation. Also, cortisol, if it's elevated chronically, is going to damage the vascular lining, the endothelial lining, and also other tissues. But that's if you have cortisol elevated chronically. Chronic stress, chronic injury or pain. And when you have elevated cortisol levels, it also suppresses your immune system. So when you bring it down by taking the ashwagandha root, you're actually improving your immune system. This is really important. Take ashwagandha root. You'll get other benefits by taking ashwagandha root too. Lignans will help with your immune system and your endocrine system, bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Super important for your cardiovascular health because when you bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals, you're reducing oxidized LDL concentrations and therefore improving your cardiovascular health, reducing plaque formation. Lignans will help the immune system because it's bringing down inflammation and also your brain. By bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, what's going to happen is your neurons are going to be less stressed, and therefore the myelin sheath is protected. And turmeric. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. You get the same benefits as you're taking with lignans. It's helping with the cardiovascular health, helping with your immune system, and helping with your brain function. Stacking these, this is where the magic comes in. Stack them together. Take the turmeric, stack it with the lignans, and stack it with the ashwagandha root. You can take them separately, but you get more benefit. There's a synergistic benefit when you stack these together. So you can take the stack, or you can take and apply this Substack into the larger protocol, which is the probiotic, the multivitamin, cleanser max 35, C60, and the boomer boost to really supercharge slowing down that aging process and boosting up that immune system. This is a very powerful stack. It's really important to take every day. Turmeric, lignans, and the ashwagandha root. Drink it with filtered water. Take it every day, especially in the winter season. Boost up that immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Growing between China and Taiwan, and now Japan has been added to the mix. The Wall Street Journal reporting President Trump allegedly told Tokyo to lower the volume on Taiwan after his call with Xi Jinping. But a spokesperson for Japanese Prime Minister says that this is not accurate and that the remark was not made. China now issuing an advisory to any citizen traveling in Japan, which is already sparking hundreds of booking cancellations. This part of its economic pressure over the prime minister's comments that Japan's military could get involved if Beijing invades Taiwan and threatens Japan. Taiwan's president introducing a supplementary defense budget increase of $40 billion, reportedly saying China has intensified its infiltration and influence campaign with plans to seize the island by force by 2027. Joining me now, legal and political strategist Katie Zachariah. Katie, good morning to you. Your reaction to tensions heating up overseas over the Taiwan issue.
Yeah, well, I love President Trump's, he's been dubbed the deal maker in chief, and I think this dispute really shows him as the mediator in chief. This is a tale as old as time between China and Japan, and Sanai Takahachi's comments were actually a slight departure from being much more explicit than is typical with regards to Taiwan. And so Xi Jinping and China are extremely upset, obviously. However, I think that this storm will be quelled by President Trump, who was able to come in and speak with both leaders. Though it is unclear what was exactly said, I do believe that the tensions will be quelled.
I think you're probably right. As deal maker in chief, the president certainly wants to handle China accordingly, whether it's trade matters or this specific issue. And I think Xi Jinping looks at him a little differently than he did Joe Biden. But let's get to this, because Chinese regulators are reportedly blocking TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, from using and deploying NVIDIA chips in new data centers. Reuters writes this, quote, ByteDance bought more NVIDIA chips than any other Chinese firm in 2025 as it raced to secure computing power for its billion-plus users amid concerns that Washington could curb supply. The reported ban underscores Beijing's efforts to reduce reliance on U.S. technology. President Trump weighing whether or not to allow NVIDIA to sell its newest H200 AI chip to Chinese firms, which would reverse a policy from August tightening restrictions on chip sales to Beijing. Maria spoke to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick about this. Watch.
Do you think that there's going to be any movement in terms of President Trump allowing those chips to get to China?
Donald Trump's going to decide what chips, if any, we sell to China. That's on the president's desk. He's going to decide how he wants to take care of it. And that's the benefit of having Donald Trump be the president of the United States, is he's making that decision with advice from everybody. We produce the best chips in the world. It's our ingenuity. It's our way of entrepreneurship, right? The best chips in the world, NVIDIA chips. We have got the ball. We are making the investment. You see it, 500 billion, 500 billion, 500 billion, 500 billion. We're going to invest for power. We're building those data centers that compute in America. There is no country close. We've got the lead, we've got the ball, and we are going to win the AI race. Count on us, count on America. We are the winner.
Katie, there's no doubt that we're producing the best AI chips right now, but the concern is the more you send them overseas to China, the more ability that they have to copy those. Your thoughts on what we should be sending and what we shouldn't?
You're absolutely correct. Look, after living in China, what I saw in Beijing is they are very good at replicating, not, in my opinion, as great at innovation. And we run a huge risk, as President Trump knows, if we're sending our best technology to China and then they are replicating it, we put ourselves really at a disadvantage and then at the advantage. And this isn't that different from this tension with rare earth minerals either. President Trump and Xi Jinping understand that we need a deal right now as it pertains to rare earth. We also need to independently start manufacturing, start refining our own rare earth minerals for national security purposes. And China is conversely doing the same with these chips. They know that they need to start domestically manufacturing them so they can also have independence and national security on their end and not rely on the United States to provide them with the most advanced. So as Secretary Lutnick said, it is up to President Trump. I do believe he will absolutely have an America First policy that will put our national security at the top priority, and then China will obviously start their own domestic and has started, but really their race to make the semiconductors and these chips the best that they can, but I do not think and I do not believe they will be able to compete with the top that NVIDIA has done.
Okay, Katie, the U.S. granting a one-year extension on some tariff exclusions for Beijing industrial and medical imports under Section 301. Reuters reporting China also buying 10 cargoes of U.S. soybeans this week, worth roughly $300 million, just one day after the phone call between President Trump and China's Xi. Maria spoke with Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins on the trade deal this week and how it's impacting farmers. Watch this.
The farm economy has been struggling for a really long time, but this president is so great. He won't let our farmers be used as leverage in these trade wars. And he said, no, China, you made a commitment under China Phase 1 in 2019. We've got to fill that commitment. We're not going to use our soybean farmers as leverage. And yes, just last night, we had another $300 million purchased from China. China has historically bought 65 to 70% of American soybeans. They are the best beans in the world. But when our farmers in America are so reliant on one purchaser, that is not healthy for anyone. So listen, we're getting the soybeans out right now. These farmers, have the highest soybean prices they've had in more than a year and a half. But the larger point here is we've got these new trade deals. We're going to start selling soybeans to a lot of other countries beginning immediately and into next year.
Katie, it's no surprise to me that the president has a phone call with President Xi, and all of a sudden they start purchasing the soybeans as they are expected to.
Right, and as to our first point, it was also in line with high tensions in the strait with Japan and China, and yet he was still able to negotiate. Look, let's calm the storm on the Taiwan, Japan, China front, and also let's continue this amazing trade deal of 87.5 million metric tons of soybean purchases. And in this issue, yes, what Secretary Rollins is saying is right. We want to spread out our soybean sales and from farmers. However, China benefits deeply by this trade deal, and President Trump knows that, so he's using this leverage to the maximum ability that he can, and he's able to negotiate these other deals around it. So in the best interest of actually China and continuing talks, keeping peace within the strait, I think that these deals really keep the economic prosperity of all countries alive and well.
Katie, Zachariah, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And it's because I think that fundamentally America has a lot of good things going for it, especially in its founding principles. But one of the most interesting things about American history is that the quintessential American holiday, Thanksgiving, is actually a celebration of early Americans' triumphs over socialism. Let me quickly recap the origins of Thanksgiving from an article Jerry Bauer wrote over a decade ago because it sums it up perfectly. It's wrong to say that America was founded by capitalists. In fact, America was founded by socialists who had the humility to learn from their initial mistakes and embrace freedom. One of the earliest and arguably most historically significant North American colonies was Plymouth Colony, founded in 1620 in what is now known as Plymouth, Massachusetts. The original colony had written into its charter a system of communal property and labor. Early communism. As William Bradford recorded in his Of Plymouth Plantation, a people who had formerly been known for their virtue and hard work became lazy and unproductive. Resources were squandered, vegetables were allowed to rot on the ground, and mass starvation was the result. And where there is starvation, there is plague. After 2.5 years, the leaders of the colony decided to abandon their socialist mandate and create a system which honored private property. The colony survived and thrived, and the abundance which resulted was what was celebrated at that iconic Thanksgiving feast. No, Thanksgiving wasn't principally about making peace with the natives. It was about celebrating a bumper crop after the basics of human nature and material reality were once again embraced. The free enterprise system, private property, and treating adults like adults. The reason I'm bringing this up is in some ways kind of obvious. We have an epidemic of Marxist sympathies going on in this country. In fact, if you look at recent polling, Gen Z say they have a favorable view of Marxism. Back in 2019, I actually co-wrote and produced a rap video called Mises versus Marx, the March of History.
It's time for the ruling classes to tremble. I'm the people's hero. The MVP, MKRS. Yeah, you know me.
During that time, I actually spent a lot of time. Actually spent a lot of time reading, not just Mises, who had already read quite a bit, The Free Market Economist, but the writings of Karl Marx, both the Communist Manifesto and his more academic work, Das Kapital. While I wouldn't put myself forward as a in-depth scholar of Marx, I certainly understand his ideas.
Not just that. I don't know if you'll say this because this is the first time I've watched the video, but Marx came from a wealthy family or an upper middle class family, and he was lazy. He was lazy. He was a lazy person because he felt as though he should be on the dole. He was not a hard worker. He's like a bohemian.
Than the average protester if you ask them on the streets of Portland. There was a recent interview that Jordan Peterson did with an author named Paul Kangor, and his book is called The Devil and Karl Marx. Kangor brings the receipts from this book in an incredible way, and I want to share it with you now and then talk a little bit more productively about why Karl's ideas themselves aren't even good in theory.
And the one word, well, two words that jump out of the Communist Manifesto, all of Marx and Engels' writings, to criticism, and Marx wrote to Arnold Rouge in 1843, called for the ruthless criticism of everything that exists.
Right.
And the other word that they use all the time is abolition, abolish. They want to abolish everything.
I think this is what makes this moment right now so tenuous, so scary. When you see brokenness in the world, it is very tempting to want to burn it all to the ground. You see this impulse on the left and on the right. You see it in every human heart. A desire to reboot the computer, which would be maybe the best way you could think of it. Oh, if we just reboot, it can grow again. This burn it all to the ground abolitionism that embodies Marx and that was clearly embedded in his psychology in deep and fundamental ways is a siren call. And it's one that we have to work really hard to keep our kids from being sucked into, because it is a vortex of despair. Because his fundamental premise, even theoretically, is that the most important thing we should abolish is ownership, private property. You could define communism as the abolition of private property. That is actually what communism fundamentally is. And if you
this is why I keep on saying, for us to be a prosperous nation and learn from the Greeks, learn from the Romans, learn from the mistakes of the 20th century, we need to have God, country, and family, and hold the ideals of the Enlightenment. And that means paying attention to what John Locke stated. It's about life, liberty, and property. When you start chipping away at life, liberty, and property, you don't have a good society. And that's exactly what Marx is trying to do. Erode life, liberty, and property. But every time that they try to ram this kind of politics, this type of economics in a system, you have these pigs that come around saying everybody is a free person, everybody is equal. But then all of a sudden, some equal animals are more equal than others. And then the rise of the Napoleon the pig. And that's exactly what Marxism does. It concentrates power and elevates a very few people to control means of production, and everyone else is a serf.
The streets and talk to people who are calling themselves Marxists will arrive at the abolition of private property.
Whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferred.
All this is antithetical to the Enlightenment. All of this is saying they are denying the virtues and the truth of John Locke, Mondani, Karl Marx, all the crazy socialists that are in office today in the United States, like AOC and the crazy ultra left wing of the Democratic Party. all the blue-haired bitches that are running around in town. They're all fucking crazy. They all want Marxism. And they all are trying to nullify the Enlightenment. He doesn't believe in the Enlightenment. He doesn't believe in constitutional rights. He doesn't believe in this idea of life, liberty, and property. He's dangerous.
So what is going on right now?
Then it gets a little more complicated sounding like workers should own the means of production.
There are also other issues that we firmly believe in. The end goal of seizing the means of production.
Right there, you're like, well, what do you mean they own it? Because if you're abolishing private property, how does anyone own anything? And very quickly, what you realize when you spend time with
Exactly. And what happens is it's a transfer of wealth, it's a transfer of ownership, and it's a means of control. It's a top-down means of control to the few. And if you have connections, or if you have enough political power, then you'll be the one that's controlling it. But if you want to have your own business, if you want to, have your own farm, you can't do that because Napoleon the Pig wants it, wants to control it. That is not what America is about. America should have a revolution in the same theme, in the same gore as the French Revolution if we keep on allowing for Marxism to destroy our constitutional rights and subsume our property. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. But you got a lot of these elites out there saying, well, we should just have communism. We should just follow Marxism to hell, and everything will be just fine. What country survived? What country is prosperous with Marxism? Zero. Zero.
Is that the incoherencies just mount on top of each other. The center of his thinking that survives, even in those who haven't read him directly, is two basic concepts. Private property should be abolished, and thus everything should be owned by everyone, and that the world is best understood as a class struggle between oppressors, victimizers, and the exploited, the oppressed.
Now, do you understand what is going on in the last 24 months with really pushing the oppressed and the oppressor? This is Marxism. And then a subset of that in the United States is pushing, when you have enough people believe in the rhetoric, where you're giving away property, you're giving away your freedoms, you're giving away your constitutional rights, because you got to remember, the ones that wrote the Constitution, it was about civil liberties, the Bill of Rights, and that we have a constitutional republic, not a democracy, so we have protection of our property, because if you just leave it to the masses and there is a majority, well, the majority could be wrong and take away your rights. Well, wait a minute. Our rights are inalienable. They're God-given. So, you have communists that are trying to take this away from you. You have elite institutions that are minting new grads in believing that socialism and communism is a great thing, that Marxism is the right thing to do. So they push this oppressed agenda. A subset of that is going to be reparations, because it's taking away property, your money, and giving it to a group of people that feel as though they've been harmed. In the United States, that's the ills of slavery. So you have the blacks that are trying to buy into this. You have people that are getting into political power that are pushing it, and they're trying to get their constituencies to give them votes. And they're going to say, well, if you help me get into office, their platform will be, oh, we're just going to give freebies. We're going to get reparations for you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. First, it's unproductive for the society. But secondly, it's against the Constitution. All right. And then, so they have this oppressed and oppressor issue. Then you expand it to women versus men, whites versus blacks, Jews versus non-Jews. Everything can be divided in this group of people versus that group of people. And so there's infighting and there's not cohesion. When you have infighting, you can divide and conquer. So you have that element to it. The oppressor and the oppressed. The ones that have money, the ones that don't have money. And Plato warned us of this. You allow the masses in a pure sense of democracy, you will lead to tyranny. That's the reason why our founding fathers, which one of my ancestors were, made sure that we had a Bill of Rights that protected our constitutional freedoms. Now the question is, if you look at this from a scholarly point of view, do you deserve it? And the answer is no, you don't deserve it because you're not willing to fight for it.
And the proletariat, the capitalist and the worker. This has been transposed in modern times to race, gender, and social order, and basic victimizer dynamic is sort of at play everywhere. Anti-racism is just another manifestation of this fundamentally Marxist construction of human relations. Those are the two mechanisms. Now, I want to break those apart for you so you can understand philosophically and operationally why these don't actually work, why they aren't true even in theory. So let's start with private property. First problem is, if I don't own it, I'm not going to take care of it. This is why people don't wash rental cars. Economists actually have a term for this. It's called the tragedy of the commons. And we've all seen this to be true. You walk down the street and it's a mess. Why is it a mess? Because somebody just threw trash on the ground. Why did they do that instead of putting it in the trash can that's at the end of the street? First of all, it is kind of a moral failing, like you're just being a jerk. But fundamentally, they don't own the street. It's owned by all of us. So it's somebody else's problem to clean the streets. Aren't I paying taxes? This is the tragedy of the commons. When there is a shared resource, people will tend to exploit it in a way that's unsustainable. In the
some cultures, because of ethics, they care about their environment, and that tragedy of the commons doesn't take place. But in the United States, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. You need ownership to move the society forward. If you don't, you are going to be less productive. So you have these very elite institutions pushing this agenda of oppressor and oppressed. It divides and conquers, and it's pushing towards this Marxist socialistic agenda. And it's antithetical to the Enlightenment. Our age today, philosophical epoch, is an anti-Enlightenment age. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's anti-Enlightenment, but there is a push towards an anti-Enlightenment. And that means erosion of constitutional freedoms, because you have to remember, what is the theoretical framework of our governing theory? Our constitutional republic is based on the Enlightenment. Well, if you have an epoch of philosophy that is anti-Enlightenment, then you're breaking apart the very foundation of constitutional republics. That is really important to understand here. You have to understand and embrace the virtues of the Enlightenment. You even have in this anti-Enlightenment world people that think the world's flat, or they don't believe in germ theory or whatever. All right? They don't even believe in anything. They just think that we're living in a matrix. Or they think that everything is self-determined, and therefore you don't have to try. So there's a nihilism that takes place, or a defeatism. The reality of the situation is you have to move forward. Time moves forward. You have to just push. Make it happen. Determination, willpower. That's part of the Enlightenment. But if you're an anti-Enlightenment individual, you're going to just end up lazy. You're going to end up not believing anything, not investigating, just assuming that everything is just wrong. And then just your gut feeling. Use your feelings, as some people say, to try to understand the world. No, you need to be empirical. And you have to build on that knowledge over time. But the thing here is that when you have a population that is anti-Enlightenment, you're going to lose your constitutional freedoms, because the very bedrock of our constitutional republic is the Enlightenment. Marx is anti-Enlightenment. When you think of Marx, do you think of something positive and light? Or do you think like dirty and grungy and depressing? I think of the Great Depression when I think of Karl Marx. I don't think of like a utopic world where there's light and prosperity. You see a shining hill. You see a city on a shining city on a hill under Marxism, or do you see that with capitalism? Now, that doesn't mean everything is perfect in capitalism. It's not. But it's far better than Marxism.
Incentives to care about the future that come with ownership. You don't take care of yourself or your things or the future. You leave it to someone else. You free ride. Now, what about this power dynamic? What about this relationship problem? The more nuanced Marxists and socialists, people like Richard Wolff and others, will claim that what they're really advocating for, fundamentally, is a kind of commune, worker-owned firms. What's wrong with that? Who doesn't want workers to own the firm? Well,
breaking news. Zelensky's top aide, Matt Yarmark, submitted resignation request. So some internal fighting going on in Ukraine's politics. See what happens.
Can create a worker-owned firm in a free enterprise system. There's nothing in America that prevents you from starting a cooperative. But here's where it really becomes essential to understand the difference and what, at the academic level, the Marxists are advocating for. Let's say you're going to start a lawn care business and you need to buy some equipment. You've got your 10 guys. You're going to go out there and mow lawns and build a great enterprise, taking care of people's property. So you go to your grandmother and say, I want you to invest in our firm. We're going to be doing the work. We think it can be worth X. You give us $100,000 out of your retirement account to help us make this happen. Does your grandmother give you the $100,000 if she gets nothing in return? Because that's what communism says should happen. You shouldn't be able to invest in someone else's enterprise and get a return, because that would be exploitation, because the workers are doing the work. I guess capital is just there to be grabbed from and put to use. It's already there. That's the thing that's so weird about communism and Marxism. There is a kind of...
And what happens if you have your own money and you invest into a business, and it's a type of business where only you have to do the work? Is that okay under Marxism? Actually not.
Assumption that there's this capital that's just waiting to be taken. Is my grandmother's savings, is that money that's in the wrong hands that I should just take? Say, buzz off, grandma, you're going to die soon anyway? No, she deserves a return. And why should she get a return? Okay, $100,000 of her savings from her life's work. She could spend that money now and enjoy it for herself. By investing it in you, she's foregoing that joy and that consumption. She has to be compensated for that, shouldn't she? You're having to wait. So one of the components of a return on investment is a return on time. I'm investing in this firm so that in the future, I won't just get the money back. I need to get more because I waited. But that's not all. The other thing is I'm putting my money at risk. So there's a good chance you're going to go out of business, son. Most businesses fail. So if you're going to put your life savings at risk in an investment, you need to get compensated for the risk. So that's the other piece of the profit that has to be accounted for. I'm putting my money at risk. It's not exploitation of surplus value. It's a return on risks that have been taken. And what communism and Marx want to do is say, no, that's immoral. You can't do it.
Marx is nothing different than a liberal Brooklynite hipster. This intellectual that sits around drinking, his cafe latte, saying the virtues of Marxism.
And the relationship between the capitalist and the worker is a lot more complex than delusional old Karl Marx thinks. It isn't just, hey, Engels, cut me another check. Sorry about your dead girlfriend. Profit is not necessarily exploitation at all. It is a return on a very vital service, which is investing and taking risks. When you try to abolish property and investment in others, you end up with murder factories. There's a saying from the Soviet Union, the Soviets pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. And that's what happens. Even in the face of brutal murder, that's what happens. The Soviet Union, Maoist China, Cambodia, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, all of these regimes were as close to Marx as we could get. They tried to abolish God, burn down churches, imprisoned nuns and priests. They were being pretty Marxist. And I know from firsthand experience that the first thing that happens when you talk about Marxism and communism is all the Marxists come out of the woodwork to say, that's not the real Marx. Real communism's never been tried. Call it whatever you like. But on the spectrum between some perfect free enterprise society and perfect communist hellhole, we got as close as you want to get in the 20th century to the latter. And the results speak for themselves. So what's the lesson in all this? Well, first of all, I hope I've given you some ways of talking about this ideology with your kids, because they are going to encounter it. Marx is a kind of demonic, mystical religion. And for those enraptured by darkness, it has an appeal. It is...
I like the framing of the darkness of that he's stating about Marxism, but to get to the core, Marxists are anti-enlightenment. They're anti-enlightenment virtues. And anything, including capitalism and our constitutional republic that's been built on the foundation of the Enlightenment, science, capitalism, constitutional republics, if you break that foundation of the Enlightenment, you end up getting Marxism.
Appeal to the worst angels of our nature. That is who Marx was. It's how he lived his life. And it is what he baked into the cake of his philosophy. And our kids need to understand this. And the only place they're going to get it is with us. It's up to us. Yep. So I hope this helps you as you help your kids.
So if you start seeing younger individuals at work or in a social setting or whatever, and you start hearing this Marxist crap, you tell them about they're antithetical to the Enlightenment, no matter how they want to spin it. And Marxism doesn't work. It's a theory it's a hypothesis. It's not even a theory. It's never worked anywhere. And the grand experiment took place during the Cold War. And they found out that capitalism works. Communism doesn't. Now, because humans have human nature, there's going to be added corruption that adds into the equation of Marxism. And this is the worry that I have with New York City, is that as it's approaching this heavily socialistic mayor and policies, that there's going to be added corruption that will lead to a devolution of the city. So when you see these kids, you got to say it's about God, country, and family. And it's not all three of them, not one. It's God, country, and family. You have to have spirituality, you have to have affinity to country, and you have to have the understanding of the bedrock of a society is the family unit. And the importance of the Enlightenment to have a prosperous society. Now, if they keep on pushing back, then you push back even further and just say, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. You're not paying attention to the reality. They're not exposed to the. I bet if you start diving into the why they think the way they do, you'll start to realize they don't subscribe to the Enlightenment. That's a problem. That's a problem. And therefore, what was the whole point of the Enlightenment? To get out of the Dark Ages. Well, Marxism is leading you back into the Dark Ages. All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual-purpose deodorants. These deodorants you use daily as a deodorant, but also help to detoxify your body, help with your immune system and your endocrine system. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, has no aluminum, no baking soda, all natural ingredients. It's for males and females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, and in citrus. Get a couple bars for your household, use it every day, and detoxify your body. It's a very high quality product. And vitamin D3, super important. Vitamin D3 helps with gene expression, so your cells perform better. If the cell is infected, taking vitamin D3 leads to apoptosis. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. You do resistance training, and it helps to build up denser bones, super important. And vitamin D3 helps with cardiovascular health, especially if you stack it with vitamin K2 and K7. Ubiquinol, the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can purchase. You can't get anything better. This is the best CoQ10 that you can purchase. Ubiquinol, super important. It helps to boost up your energy levels and help with the health of your mitochondria and to help to protect your neurons. Super important, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Take Ubiquinol, you need it. And olive leaf extract, dual purpose. Helps to boost up your immune system and it helps with your cardiovascular health. It'll help to bring down LDL levels and help to increase your HDL levels. And when that happens, you are producing less plaque formation. So please take the olive leaf extract every day. Drink it with filtered water. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Get these products for yourself and for gifts for the holidays. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, let's listen to Jeffrey Sachs.
Professor Sachs, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let me begin by reading a quote coming from Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, responding to the latest remarks by the Japanese Prime Minister, which the Chinese said crossed the red line. Here's what he said, quote, "It is shocking that Japan's current leaders have publicly sent the wrong signal of attempting military intervention in the Taiwan issue, said things that they shouldn't have said, and crossed a red line that they should not have been touched." And here's the quote coming from the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. As someone who has been watching the region very closely over the years, Professor Sachs, your response to why the Chinese have been very serious about the Japanese remark lately?
I think we must start from the point of view that the tensions over Taiwan are real, partly because of Taiwan's domestic politics and statements that are provocative by politicians in Taiwan. When it comes to Japan,
It is the fact that over the last 10 years, Japan has become less pacifist, more military oriented. It is raising its military spending. It talks in a more hawkish way, none of which, to my mind, makes sense for Japan's interests. No doubt the tensions have risen in the last 10 years, and Japan's pacifism after World War II is in many ways a thing of the past. It's not that Japan is flagrantly militaristic, but it is becoming more military oriented, rising military spending, rising tensions, and the statement that Prime Minister Takaichi made is consistent with the hardline faction of her party that she represents.
Should people accept a Japan that is much more militaristic than it used to be? After all, Japan has been the one that started the invasion against its neighbors, whether it's on the Korean Peninsula, against China, Southeast Asia, millions of lives lost as a result of that war. And we are also seeing war criminals, their ashes are being put into the Yasukuni Shrine, in which some of the prime ministers of Japan still go there and pray for those. Some are Class A war criminals. So should the world, should the region, including China, just accept a ever more militarized Japan and ever more militarist Japan?
When it comes to Japan, it is the sad history that when Japan industrialized first among the Asian countries in the late 19th century, it joined the so-called imperialist club of European imperial powers. It invaded China in 1894-95. That's when actually Taiwan became temporarily a colony of Japan, when Korea became a colony of Japan. And then Japan brutally invaded China from the 1930s onward, and well over 10 million Chinese people died from that. It was horrific. The cruelty was immense. The suffering was immense. We should be remembering this not by militarist language or divides, but by saying everything should be done to make peace in Northeast Asia. There should not be any division, in fact, of China on one side and Japan on the other side. That's partly a U.S. post-World War II creation. The U.S. quickly helped Japan to rebuild after Japan's militarism, in part as a supposed bulwark against Soviet and Chinese communism. That was the U.S. idea. But Japan never really came to grips, I would say, with what it had done in repeated wars in East Asia and in Southeast Asia. And the militarism is dangerous and anachronistic, and it should have no place in our world today.
We not only see rhetoric coming from the Japanese prime minister, but also follow-up decisions made by Japan. For example, the latest remarks coming from the defense minister suggesting the deployment of missiles in places near China's Taiwan island.
A military buildup by Japan and possibly triggering a major arms race or the worst disaster, a military conflict, is completely against the real interest of Japan. It's against the interest of the world.
But we're seeing the other way around, Professor. It seems that politicians, especially those domestically weak, for example, the current prime minister, when she came into power, she is having a coalition government, and therefore she's weak, and there's likely to be a parliamentary election not favorable to her coalition. So we see someone who's trying to play with political opportunist approach, and that might be to her interest politically, but certainly not to her country's long-term peace and stability, and not to her neighbors' long-term peace and stability.
I think that it also absolutely must be recognized that the United States has a major role in this. The United States, as Japan's security protection, should be saying strongly to Japan, don't go there, don't do this, don't stir up trouble. The United States, as the major counterpart power here, should be saying very clearly to Prime Minister Takaichi and to the Japanese counterparts, do not do this. We don't want another war. We don't want to encourage imprudent behavior by anybody. We don't want to encourage accidents or...
No. I totally disagree with him. What we need is the Allied Alliance, that's Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, the United States, and even some of the Europeans, like the UK, maybe even France. We all need to band together and push back on the crouching tiger, right? China wants the first island chains. And if they take them, they take Taiwan, the United States has lost hegemonic power and the freedom of navigation. That is unacceptable. So no, we need to be standing firm and pushing back and supporting Taiwan. Unfortunately, the United States has been hemming and hawing on supporting and not supporting Taiwan because of our stance against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Because we wanted to align with China, that way we would be working together to fight the Soviet Union. But now we're in a Thucydides trap, where there's a rising power that's starting to happen, and we're the dominant superpower, the United States. So you have the rising power of China, and the United States may lose its hegemonic power in the Pacific. Now, do we take the lessons learned from Thucydides or not? What are we going to do? We got to pay attention here.
Up extreme nationalism that can get us into horrible trouble.
Recently, US President Donald Trump made a phone call to the Japanese Prime Minister. Both sides have not revealed the content of the phone call. Your perspective on how responsible the United States needs to be to make sure its allies are not crossing the red line and put both US states and others in the region at danger?
Well, the first thing is the United States itself must not cross the red line, because the U.S. has been coming pretty close to China's red lines over the last 10 years. The U.S. adopted a far harsher...
What is this guy talking about? All you got to do is go on any day for the last 5 or 10 years. What has China been doing in the international waters? What has China been doing with the airspace? They've been probing, and they've been bullying Taiwan. This guy, what the hell is he pays attention to the news? My God, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Well, we can't cross the red line for China. China basically said they're going to be taking Taiwan. Why do you think we're trying to shove as many chips for manufacturing into Texas and Arizona? Because we know that there's going to be a conflict between China and Taiwan soon. And the Chinese have said they were going to create the conflict. First it was 2025, maybe it was 2027. Some of the war planners are saying anywhere from 2027 to 2029. But the bottom line is it's going to happen in this decade. What is this guy talking about? The United States crossing the red line? What about China? Oh, he's talking on CGTN.
anti-China policy starting around a decade ago. And Trump's trade war against China this year was part of that. But there has seemed very fragile and very uncertain, but there seems to have been a U.S. stepping back from that in recent months and even in recent days. It seems that the U.S. is beginning to understand something, which is that China's not going to be cowed. China is not going to succumb to U.S. choke points because they don't exist. China holds a lot of potential choke points like the rare earth magnets vis-a-vis the U.S. And Western economies. And it seems that the U.S. has toned down some of its rather harsh anti-China rhetoric, even in the past weeks and days. On the U.S. side, there was no defense of the Japanese prime minister. There was no running to her defense. There was no anti-China rhetoric. Quite the contrary. What the United States has said in recent days is we want to get back to good relations, and President Trump wants to make a visit to China. And so that's good news. This is very important.
According to the latest phone call between China and the U.S. President, the Chinese radar suggests that Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized to the U.S. President Donald Trump, China and the U.S. fought side by side against the fascism and militarism. Now they should work together to safeguard the achievements of the victory in World War II. Now, certainly, it seems that many analysts suggest what Chinese President Xi Jinping is trying to say is the issue about Taiwan and also about the regional order after the World War II should be jointly not only mutually understood to China and the United States, but also jointly defended by China and the United States.
Do you think that China is going to allow U.S. military to go up and down the Taiwan Strait and go through the 9-dash line in international waters if China takes Taiwan? Of course not. They're not going to allow the United States to do that. And that's what I'm saying. If you capitulate and let China take Taiwan, the United States doesn't have freedom of navigation in that region. Now, I don't know about your grandfather, but mine actually fought in World War II as a CB in the Navy, making sure that the United States won the war. And post-war, that allowed for us to have the hegemonic power that we have today. You, the ones that are watching that are from the United States, benefited from the people that served in the Navy in World War II. Your lifestyle is directly linked to their sacrifice.
Well, I think there's something very profound in the statement, and it even goes beyond the China-U.S. relations. There were actually 4 major powers in World War II fighting together. That was the United States, the Soviet Union, especially mainly Russia, Britain, and China. And this was an alliance against the German-Japanese fascism. And it could and should have continued after World War II. Instead, a Cold War developed. The relations broke down. But what President Xi is rightly reminding us is that the U.S. and China were on the same side in World War II. Actually, I wanted just to add that Russia and the United States were on the same side during World War II. We should remember that. That's not just a footnote of history. That is the possibility of how the great powers could actually, even today, say, we have shared interests. We even have a shared history. We have been allies in the past, and we should be allies, if I could put it that way, going forward.
Professor, after Chinese and US president's phone call, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson suggesting that conversation.
No, this dovetails really well with the other video that we were playing about Marxism. Now think about this. China, even though they have a quasi-open market, it's still heavily controlled from a one-party system. The CCP, the Communist Party, all right? They are the modern-day Soviet Union now. And the thing is that they're far better with their manufacturing and their economy than what the Soviet Union had. Now, a big part of that was because the United States and a bunch of companies over there and FDI money and investment that built them up. China didn't build itself up. The United States built China. If they succeed with taking Taiwan, then the Marxists in the United States and other countries are going to say, let's just have a one-party system. Let's control the economy. Let's have Marxist light. Not a capitalist society, but a controlled society. Now, do you think that the Chinese, with its CCP politic, is in line with the Enlightenment or is antithetical to the Enlightenment? Now do you see why it's so important to make sure that Taiwan doesn't fall? Because this, if it falls, you'll have the intelligentsia saying we need to adopt policies that are very similar to China. And that's going to be very dangerous. China has to fall. Has to fall. Or to quote loosely Reagan, we win, they lose.
In place on the phone, which lasted for an hour, are three words: positive, friendly, constructive. Now, how would you understand the series of
destroy the CCP? Allow for real capitalism and a constitutional republic to rise from its ashes. That's what needs to happen. And I'm willing to bet if you survey the population, that's probably what they want. But they can't, because it's a top-down government with social scoring and AI and lots of cameras watching you 24/7. Because President Xi doesn't like it when you rise up. Because he's dictator for life. Be negative, don't be friendly, and destroy China. We continue.
adjectives used by the Chinese side to describe that phone call? And what does that mean to indicate to you about China's attitude of continuous communication with the US side?
We have a very ambiguous situation right now and a very unstable situation. It has been a decade in which the United States overtly went on a contain China policy. We had the same vis-a-vis Russia. There are hints, again, I don't want to overread it, but there are hints that President Trump, in his own approach, actually wants good relations among the major powers. He often is quite belligerent against small countries, but he has this tendency to see that there should be at least a normalcy with President Putin and Russia and with President Xi and China. I believe, again, we're guessing, but he may be trying to steer away from the overtly neoconservative hardline approach of the past decade.
After talking about the phone call by the Chinese side, we also saw a tweet by the US president in his X account talking about the relationship with China, quote, is extremely good, end of quote. How would you understand the timing and also the degree of the descriptions he's trying to put into a public statement?
Again, the broad direction of U.S. policy during the last 10 years is usually, and I think rightly described as a containment policy, that the U.S. Was trying to contain China. I regard that policy as absurd. I don't think the United States can or should, quote, contain China. But that was the dominant thinking in foreign policy circles and in Congress and in the rhetoric politically in the United States. But I do see signs, as I am emphasizing, that this is being rethought. It is a losing strategy for the United States to go in that direction. And I think that the United States, at least the foreign policy executive branch, the president, the National Security Council, the State Department, the Pentagon, I hope, are all thinking maybe that wasn't the right thing. We can't win trade wars. We can't win hot wars. We shouldn't go in that direction. I do see a change in tone and in rhetoric and in tweets in recent weeks that suggests to me a kind of reconsideration.
But Professor, as you know, there are several concerns from the Chinese side. For example, the technological blockade the U.S. has been exercising against China, for example, about chips and artificial intelligence. There's also the investment opportunities, whether Chinese companies could have equal ones inside the United States. Meanwhile, export bans, and the list goes on. So how do you see these questions coming from the Chinese side being addressed by the U.S. so far?
I don't think there's going to be a consistent and stable and open policy for years to come, probably. The mood in Washington is protectionist. It remains surly. It's a little bit more realistic now than it was a few months ago because of the fact that China said, no, we're not accepting that approach. But I don't think that we're going to have smooth, open, totally positive relations. There is, from the U.S. perspective, a heated competition underway, and that means that it's not going to be smooth. And technology competition will continue. My own view is that China is making amazing breakthroughs, one after another, on technology. So even if the chips don't exactly match in China, NVIDIA's chips, China's finding all sorts of breakthrough ways with quantum photonics, with new computer designs, with many breakthroughs, fundamental breakthroughs, it seems, being announced week by week right now.
Thinking about the April visit by U.S. President to China, and later the interactions likely between the two presidents, whether it is at APEC or G20 or another visit by Chinese president to the United States later next year. How do you see both sides can work out some specific plans in order to make sure that these occasions are being nurtured beforehand in terms of ambience?
It's pretty clear to Donald Trump and to the political class in Washington that if you take a trip to China, you want it to go well. That's a major occasion. It's a major occasion of protocol and ceremony and mutual respect across countries. It's not only a visit by a particular leader. So if we have this visit, that augurs well for actually trying to clear the way for a better 2026.
All righty. Before we continue, I think the next video I'll most likely play is from Cash Jordan talking about looting in LA. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium. Magnesium helps with the efficacy of vitamin D3. Magnesium helps with brain function. Vitamin C will help with skin. And also vitamin C and magnesium will boost up that immune system. Magnesium and zinc also helps with brain function and boosts up the immune system and helps with the efficacy of vitamin D3. Stack them together to get a synergistic approach where you're boosting up the immune system, helping with your skin, and helping with brain function. Super important, all right? In the post-2020 crisis, there's an aftershock. And that aftershock involves problems with the immune system and problems with brain function. It's really important very important to take the proper supplementation to improve your neural health and to also approach a holistic protocol where you're detoxifying your body and you are training your mind, learning new things, and also being active. You want to do cardiovascular, resistance training, balancing, and stretching exercises. And that will help with your brain function. Right? You're activating nerves, you're activating neurons, you're activating the cerebellum, you're learning to balance, you're improving your gait. Make sure you do lots of walking and learn new things. And when you do this, you're improving at the micro level the health of the neuron. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin C and magnesium, get the magnesium and zinc, stack them together, take it every day, especially during the winter season. And Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula will help you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. This is very important so you're well rested in the morning. You're detoxifying your central nervous system so the neurons will be healthier. And you're consolidating memory so you can think better. So you'll be able to retrieve your memory. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, and GABA, passion flower. By taking this every night, you're improving the health of your brain and slowing down the aging process. And omega-3. Omega-3 helps the cardiovascular system. It's going to help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And when you do that, you're slowing down plaque formation. It also brings down inflammation. And it reduces the stickiness of your red blood cells. So you're reducing overclotting. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the omega-3 every day to improve your cardiovascular health. And stack it with the Good Night Formula so you're getting a good sleep and helping with brain function. And get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium to improve your skin, help with brain function, and your immune system. This is a very powerful stack right here. And if you improve your cardiovascular health, you're also improving blood flow to your brain and providing the micronutrients and the micro environment for proper dendritic connections between neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, stack this, and stay healthy, all right? It's a holistic approach, and it works. It'll slow down the aging process. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And again, like I said, we win, they lose.
This wild moment when a jewelry store owner on a group of thieves in Madeira near Fresno, and this man broke into the store only to be met by the owner who was ready to protect his business.
So as California marches down the progressive path of destruction, the law-abiding are taking notice as their businesses, homes, and cars are on borrowed time while criminals zero in on them again and again. Even though 2 months ago, the governor deployed crime-fighting teams which were supposed to end this madness. But how are you supposed to stop the bad guys when your entire sanctuary state harbors and protects them?
Something like that happened in Union City.
That is very scary. Her quick thinking, possibly stopping with police there, called an attempted home invasion. The next day, 70 miles away, a chase that Modesto police say led to the arrest of the same suspects.
Take a look at this brazen smash and grab. Police say more than 20 masked robbers stormed side jewelers after ramming the front door with a car, as you see there. They were in and out in just 60 seconds.
Surveillance video shows someone breaking into this truck and stealing it in a matter of seconds. But it's how they pulled it off that has people in Anaheim Hills talking.
Preliminary investigation shows that they kind of were in the area for a little while, kind of pacing the business. This was definitely meticulous.
We need more protection. This is something that it could happen to anyone, and I don't feel safe.
Now, other store owners wondering if they will be next.
So apparently California has some of the worst inflation in America. This place is totally unaffordable. Look at this. And what nobody wants to admit is that inflation is directly tied to the amount of crime you allow the bad guys to suck out of the people in your state who want to do the right thing. And every single day, the law-abiding have their lives made more expensive by crime, even if it doesn't happen in their driveway. But wait a second, don't progressives tell us most crime is victimless? Take, for example, shoplifting. These stores could get an insurance policy which covers their losses and be made whole again, which means there's no reason to jail non-violent thieves, because when they steal, nobody loses, right? Wrong. Insurance does not cover the entire total loss of a store. And after these places get cleaned out, these stores can lose their insurance coverage. Or if they want to maintain it, the rates could go up so high, it's just unaffordable. Which means when customers enter stores in high crime areas, they pay unaffordable, inflated prices because of it. And every item on the shelf is priced to include the cost of theft these stores are reeling from. And the same goes with insurance policies. Want to park your car in a high crime area? You're going to pay for it. Which brings us to the real reason decriminalization is going to be the end of California. The law-abiding can't subsidize crime forever. Their lives are just getting more and more expensive, and that's causing people to leave. And after enough law-abiding people leave, the only folks left are going to be the criminals. Because remember, this isn't just a state that slaps hardened thugs with notoriously light sentences for behavior that would end with someone wearing a jumpsuit for a very long time elsewhere. It's also a sanctuary which won't turn over international fugitives to the federal government and decides to release them too. Which means if you need a home base to plan and commit crime, California is very appealing.
Amazing when you watch the people that are doing this. Who are they? Latinos and blacks.
There were 2 more burglaries this morning in Studio City. They found 26-year-old Juan Montez with burglary tools, the bike, and the same backpack seen on security video from at least 20 other business break-ins within the last month.
That's wild. 20 burglaries. And this guy's out on the streets. He's free. No consequences. How do you survive when criminals are allowed to do that? On top of that, breaking into over 20 businesses, that makes someone an expert criminal, a hardened thug. And this person has become this way because the law is powerless to stop them. There are no consequences, unfortunately, because jail just isn't something they're worried about. When are they going to learn their lesson? Burglary number 21, burglary number 22. This doesn't make any sense.
Break into the store, steal. Goes back to what I was saying. God, country, and family. People don't do this if you have God, country, and family. People don't do this when you subscribe to capitalism and when you subscribe to trying to make the country and your environment and your city more productive. When you have morality, stuff like that doesn't happen. Stuff like this happens when you hate the country, when you're a Marxist, when you don't believe in the Enlightenment and you're living in hell, when you don't have strong affinity for God, country, and family. That's what happens. People like this that do this type of stuff, they're sacks of shit. They don't deserve to live. They're sacks of shit.
So in this clip, you've got criminal instigators who rip open the doors to this 7-Eleven, and then you got a whole bunch of people who flood in and start stealing stuff. And you've likely got the ringleaders of this operation, and then you've got people that are tagging along, learning the ways of the criminal underworld, all experiencing together the lack of a police presence and the lack of any consequence for this awful behavior. And this is how you get repeat robbers who just don't stop. But what about the idea
what do you
that
see there?
insurance mean?
What do you see there? Blacks. Blacks doing it. Breaking in and stealing. Because they think that it's okay. And this is what happens when you have a society that's gravitating to the oppressor and the oppressed. Marxism. That's what you get right there. Land of the jungle. With no morality.
These businesses have nothing to worry about. Well, look at this next clip and tell me if these business owners are worried. So why would a business owner board up their store if they've got insurance and if they're not worried about crime? Why would they do that? Because they are worried about it. Because insurance doesn't cover everything. Because if these places get cleaned out, some of them may never come back. That's why. And progressive criminal sympathizers who don't understand how the real world works just can't believe why this is happening. They think criminals should be free to roam streets because what they do is victimless. Nobody suffered. But that's not true. And it's this lax attitude towards crime that recently drove one store owner over the edge. You know, I was just backing up some of the clips used to make this video, and then it hit me. We trust big tech companies with our entire digital lives, our files, our photos, our videos. They can see everything we've got. They can scan it. They can use it to train AI and sell us stuff. And that's why I was so glad to find a sponsor for this video that cares about its customers and won't farm them out.
Surveillance video captured this wild moment in Madeira near Fresno. This happened on Thursday when the masked man broke into the store, only to be met by the owner who was ready to protect his business. Those thieves ran away with about $170,000 in jewelry. Police were able to recover the getaway car, but not the thieves yet.
This is crazy. So this store, it's 5:30 in the afternoon, according to the security footage, November 13th. Look, they got bars on the windows. There's a security camera. They've likely got insurance. They're doing everything right, but the thieves still took this place for over 6 figures and got away. No arrests. And you know what? These criminals, they're using the same, move in, move out tactics that are being used at 7-Elevens. It's like thieves are honing their game on a candy store and then taking their skills to a jewelry store. And this is only happening because these individuals never get stopped. No one's stopping them at the candy store. No one's stopping them at the gas station. Nobody's stopping them in your driveway. And some of these folks, unfortunately, decide not to go out and to get real jobs, but to go bigger and better in their minds, which just allows them to devastate the very communities decriminalization and sanctuary laws claim they make better.
Preliminary investigation shows that they kind of were in the area for a little while, we would say in our field casing the business. This was definitely meticulous.
Wow. So go figure. Dangerous criminals who fear nothing are staking out businesses and they just stay on the streets robbing them. These are not people who are going to pursue any life other than a life of crime, because it is a life of crime with no consequence. And if they don't rob this store, their friends are going to go rob the store. So they're actually under pressure from the rest of the criminal element in California to hit these places as fast as they can. It's terrible. You've got criminals competing with each other to see who can prey on the law-abiding first. And look at this, how unaffordability is surging in places that do not punish criminals. Inflation is the result of real-world policies that drive up costs, and the Golden State policies are toxic. Of the 5 worst regions, 3 are in California. But if you want to force up insurance rates for businesses, don't stop criminals. If you want to force up insurance rates for people to insure their vehicles, don't stop the robbers. And if you want to raise prices at every single business that somebody needs to shop at, whether it's the grocery store or the jewelry store, let those places get hit so often that when a store owner puts a case of tomatoes on the shelf, they have to say, gee, how many of these are going to get stolen? Okay, add the loss factor into the price of these and let the law-abiding pay for it.
Says people are using new tech.
This Black Friday gift is my favorite dentist hack to clean my retainers. If you wear a retainer every night like I do, you know how hard it is to keep it truly fresh and clean.
Pay for it.
Says people are using new technology to steal high-end cars and trucks. In this case, they stole a truck with help from a tablet made for locksmiths.
Oh,
Watch
yeah?
again.
So you see him walk up to the car. First thing he does, he actually checks the handle. Checks the handle first, sees the car's locked. So then he heads over to the back window and he uses a window punch to break it. Once it happens, because there's tint on the window stays intact and he's able to peel it off and climb in. And then he's being handed a locksmith tool, a computer device that plugs into the computer system in the car, so you can quickly reprogram it and turn the car on so you can leave with that truck.
Yeah, I don't think it's the fault of the owner for installing window tint that peeled off easily. I think these guys were getting into that car one way or another. And the fact that they can just walk up and do this and reprogram a vehicle and just drive it away and nobody gets caught is maddening. On top of that, these cars that get stolen out of people's driveways, these are the cars that are used in these crazy crash and grab robberies. These are getaway cars that robbers use to commit other crimes. And if you won't stop auto theft, you're going to have massive unaffordability everywhere because those are the cars people are driving around when they do everything else they shouldn't be doing.
Terrifying surveillance video showing the moments police in Northern California say a girl spots armed suspects outside her home who suddenly run after her.
Where did they get the car?
Police say the girl got inside the house and told her family to call for help. The suspects running away.
Wow.
I can't believe something like that happened in Union City.
That's wild.
That is very scary.
Her quick thinking, possibly stopping what police there called an attempted home invasion. The next day, 70 miles away. A chase that Modesto police say led to the arrest
Same guys.
suspects.
We're in the same outfits.
Officers rushing in to stop another possible attempted home invasion.
So these guys are driving around in cars with license plates on camera, which have to be stolen, or else why would they do that? Looking for homes to break into in the middle of the day, and there aren't. What does this do to people's homeowners insurance? How does this help people sell their home at some point in the future? It doesn't. Having rampant crime like this makes life totally unlivable every single way you can slice it. And if you're going to have a place that protects and harbors criminals, tells them that if criminals come here and they're not even supposed to be in America, that those people will never get turned over to ICE, you're going to have massive crime problems. You're going to have an emboldened population of crooks that thinks they can do whatever they want. And we don't even know where these criminals are from. All we know is that they feared nothing. So they're driving around in the middle of the day dressed in all black. This is absolutely, it's like something out of a movie, of like a dystopian future that shouldn't even exist in this country because we've decided that jails are better off empty with nobody inside of them and criminals deserve unlimited second chances. This is what we're looking at here. Unlimited second chances.
4 suspects, 3 teens, ages 14 to 17, and their 22-year-old taken into custody.
Wow. That's crazy.
I mean, it's a blue ribbon for Modesto PD. This was a tragedy, looking for an address, and Modesto PD put an end to it.
Yeah, they did, but what did they tell us? They told us 3 of these people were teenagers. Look at this. According to Google, teens who commit violent crime in California are typically handled in the juvenile justice system, which focuses on rehabilitation through counseling. Education and treatment consequences in the juvenile system range from probation and community service to confinement in juvenile hall or youth correction facilities. Well, we're going to have to see what happens, because a lot of these cases, they might result in a level of consequence that does not change the minds of these criminals and fails to redirect them, to divert them off the path of crime. And that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a system that doesn't tell a criminal when it's time to stop until they have done something that is so terrible that then the law finally kicks in. But we're decriminalizing everything small. And now what? People say, you know what, I'm not set with robbing 7-Eleven. I want to go for a jewelry store. Or, you know what? I think I can get a lot of money if I rob a house. And they think that that is a good idea because no one has ever told them that they can't do it. Sure, they know that it's wrong deep down. They have a conscience which tries to convict them. But since there's no consequence, there's nothing there to back that up. And then we got the guy that broke into 20 businesses who's apparently an adult. Like, at what point does that individual learn their lesson? They're causing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in destruction, breaking windows, destroying property, stealing what's ever inside, riding around on a bike with a backpack. And that's just allowed. Like, that person doesn't lose their freedom. And that person's not some teenager that's going through a different justice system. This is somebody who faces an adult justice system. At what point are they going to say, gee, I'm just kind of sick of robbing these businesses and, you know, coming up with less than I could get if I did something worse? We have to change that mindset. And in states that allow crime, I don't see how that's going to change. What do you think? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
A trusted strategic partner already by your side. Imagine that. We can.
We need a society that when we start seeing this sort of thing happening, we need to beat the shit out of them because they don't understand anything but violence. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You're going to have to build muscle so you're beating the shit out of the people that are stealing your property. Take Myotrol. This will help to build muscle and help to maintain muscle. This is very important to take, especially if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. This has the ingredients that allows for the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. So you can beat the shit out of people that are stealing your property, like Marxists. Now, Myotrol has polyphenols, lignans, and flavonoids to help with that gene expression. Myotrol will also help the health of your mitochondria so you have the energy to maintain the muscle. Do resistance training. Build muscle with Myotrol. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from taking Myotrol to help with the strength gains for your sport. Digestive enzyme complex helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Eases the stress on the digestive tract. This has bromelain in it, so it helps to break up clots. And digestive enzyme complex will help to break up glycoproteins because it has proteolytic enzymes. Super important, especially during the winter season. And digestive enzyme complex helps to reduce the load on your pancreas. Super important to keep your pancreas healthy. Why? Because you don't want to be a Steve Jobs. Now, collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, your nails, your hair, your musculature, your bone density, your cartilage, your joint health. Take it every day. This is very high quality collagen. It's a month's supply. Please go to my store. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and don't be a Marxist. Support capitalism. Support your health. Build muscle. All right, let's listen into CNN. U.S. land action in Venezuela will start very soon.
The United States will strike inside Venezuela, quote, very soon. He made the statement while speaking to members of the U.S. military. Thanksgiving phone call. Have a listen.
In the recent weeks, you've been working to deter Venezuelan drug traffickers and would sell many. Of course, there aren't too many coming in by sea anymore, if you probably noticed that. We'll be starting to stop them by land also. The land is easier, but that's going to start very soon. We warn them.
In 3
Stop
days.
sending poison to our country.
The US has killed more than 80 people in strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean. The administration has offered no proof that the vessels were actually carrying drugs. Alejandro Velasco is a historian and associate professor at NYU. He's joining us from Amherst, Massachusetts. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Let's get into this. President Trump says the US is preparing to stop Venezuelan drug traffickers by land very soon. How seriously should we be taking this language? And what does it signal about a possible shift in strategy?
That's a great question. The reality is that over the past 2 weeks, what we've seen is very contradictory discourse coming out of the White House. And in fact, other members of the administration, we have some hawkish elements every day seeming to either leak or directly state that they seek greater intervention in Venezuela directly. And of course, we just had the recent naming designation of the so-called Cartel de los Soles as another escalation into that end. On the other hand, Trump has also said that he's not really interested in necessarily in intervention. He wants to talk with Maduro. Maybe there's room for negotiation. So, right now, this all seems like part of a larger psychological operations game or warfare to see if Maduro breaks.
The US now has more than a dozen warships and 15,000 troops in the region. How unusual is this level of force around Venezuela, and what message is Washington trying to send?
Yeah, it's unprecedented, is what it is. Certainly, it's the largest deployment outside of planned military exercises in the 21st century. And even in the 20th century, it was an unusual deployment for this part of the region. I think what it says, obviously, is that the United States is prepared to intervene. The real question is whether the person who has ultimate say and whether that happens, which is President Trump, has in fact agreed to do so. But he's positioned to be there, and to some extent, the fact that there is this massive deployment commits some kind of intervention, because without something changing in Venezuela, this might actually be seen as a victory for the Maduro government.
Well, while we're talking about things changing in Venezuela, the administration here has just designated Maduro and his allies as members of a foreign terrorist organization. What does that actually mean in practical terms?
It basically gives the administration more legal leeway to take actions that might not otherwise be permissible in a context of war or pre-war, if you want to call it that. It means that it has a greater arsenal and repertoire of action and engagement for people that it considers or designates to be part of this cartel. It also means that it doesn't have to provide nearly as much information, either certainly to Congress, which it already hasn't provided enough information, but to the judicial system. And so it allows for a greater range of action than has been the case.
Can you tell me, how are Venezuelans viewing this build-up, and what impact could Trump's comments have on Maduro's domestic standing?
Venezuelans have been through a lot, not just over the last 5, 10, 15 years, but really over the last 25, 30 years. The state of heightened crisis has almost been a kind of status quo. And so Venezuelans are going about their lives. Obviously, my friends and family who are there are anxious or concerned about potential actions. Some of them are moving if they feel like they're close to military targets. They're finding elsewhere to stay. But for most people, it's getting into the holiday season, and so they're trying to live their lives. But it has also had significant impact because the U.S. has also said that airlines should not fly into or in Venezuelan air territory. And so many airlines have not canceled flights. And so that's affected the plans of many Venezuelans that they had, especially for holidays, to travel. And so it's definitely an impact.
Okay, we'll leave it there for now, but let's see what happens next. Thanks for breaking it down, Alejandro Velasco. Appreciate it.
New this morning, President Trump says the U.S. military will start targeting alleged drug trafficking networks inside Venezuela very soon.
We've almost stopped. It's about 85% stopped by sea. You probably noticed that people aren't wanting to be delivering by sea. And we'll be starting to stop them by land also. The land is easier, but that's going to start very soon. We warn them, stop sending poison to our country.
Thousands.
When your severe asthma says you can't, Tespire says you can. Tespire is a pet oxygen for people 12 and over that helps you prevent attacks and relieve asthma symptoms. Tespire is not a rescue medication. Serious allergic reactions may occur. Get help for swelling of your face, mouth, tongue, trouble breathing. Rash or eye allergy can happen. Don't stop asthma treatments without talking to your doctor. Tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection or your asthma worsens. Avoid live vaccines. Sore throat, joint, back pain may occur.
Very timing.
Thousands of U.S. troops and more than a dozen warships are in the Caribbean, in the waters off Venezuela. You were seeing the strikes, some of those strikes that have happened in the waters off of Venezuela. They've been carrying out those deadly strikes for weeks now. Joining me now, CNN senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. Thank you so much for being here this morning. All right, President Trump is saying that he will soon stop the Venezuelan drug trafficking by land. Do you read that to mean he's talking about troops on the ground? I mean, what else could it mean?
I think it sounds like boots on the ground. I was just reading an email I got from a Vietnam War veteran who said the four most frightening words he can imagine a president saying are, "The land is easier," meaning once you start putting boots on the ground, it gets a lot harder than dropping bombs from the air or launching missiles from the sea. And I know that, having launched a lot of missiles from the sea, the danger is when you put troops ashore. So what's the president talking about? I don't know. I hope it would be very limited kind of incursions, perhaps against drug labs, maybe going after some leadership targets. I could sketch those out in greater depth, Sarah. But frankly, we need to be very cautious about anything that involves putting U.S. boots on the ground in Venezuela. I hope the Congress gets involved with this. Final thought, sometimes people look back to the 1980s and 90s when we invaded Panama and kind of took that country and took the leader Noriega, a very successful operation called Just Cause. Here's the problem. Panama is a tiny country. Venezuela, it's twice the size of California. It would be a big military operation.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Etihad City.
All righty. That's Venezuela. Let's go to holiday shoppers and high costs by the hill. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. This will help to improve your ATP and your cellular metabolism and protect neurons. Super important to take, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Protect those neurons, rev up your metabolism, get more energy. And clarity factor. Clarity factor will get rid of that brain fog, allow you to consolidate memory, and you'll be able to concentrate on tasks, and over time, your dendritic connections will improve. You'll have better positive neuroplasticity. You're going to be thinking faster. You're going to have better memory. You're going to be able to concentrate. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Take it every day and learn new things. Take advantage of this positive neuroplasticity. And when you're learning new things and creating a better microenvironment through nutrition and supplementation and better blood flow by working out, you're going to improve the health of your brain. See, a lot of people, they don't realize that you actually have to give your brain nutrients. You have to do new things. You have to train yourself. Just like how you have to train your muscles, you have to train your brain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Clarity Factor. This will help with brain function. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Take it every day. Gets rid of that brain fog and allows you to concentrate. Okay, let's listen into what the Hill has to say.
Lindsay, what is in your lens today?
Let's talk about this holiday lens. So walk into any coffee shop right now and you'll hear it. The whispered, half-joking panic of people clutching their first holiday lattes. Isn't it too early for this? Maybe, but the real sound underneath that question is a kind of financial dread, because this year, the holidays aren't just twinkly lights and matching pajamas. They're a mirror. And what they're reflecting back is a widening gap between those who could still afford to go big for Christmas and those quietly scaling everything down. Bank of America calls it a, quote, tale of two wallets. And that feels about right. Higher earners are planning to spend more. Lower income families are shopping earlier than ever. Well, because when your budget is tight, timing becomes a strategy. On social media, influencers are preaching de-influencing. Skip the new jammies, reuse decorations, hunt for secondhand gifts. It's not stingy, they're saying it's survival. And while we all love the tradition of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, it runs headfirst into the reality of this economy. Construction costs for a float averaged $30,000 to $100,000 just 2 years ago. One of those things. Macy's pays about $140,000 a year in property taxes just to store those giant balloons. Inflating them, that can cost at a minimum $500,000 with more than 5,000 volunteers, 17 giant character balloons, 22 floats, and hundreds of performers. You get the point. It's a whole different financial universe than most Americans are living in. Meanwhile, shoppers on Main Street are being told that by the National Retail Federation that holiday spending is expected to slow this year. Tariffs, grocery prices, interest rates, everything is squeezing budgets. And it's changing how people talk about Christmas and, frankly, how they talk about politics. Days before President Donald Trump was sworn in for his second term, he promised to bring down the prices Americans were feeling at the gas pump and grocery store. But now he's defining a kind of freestyle capitalism. Tariffs here, deregulation there, government ownership stakes in private companies, without, according to experts, a clear logic. Take economist Marina Mazzucato, saying Trump's policies are, quote, more like an idiosyncratic hodgepodge, adding, quote, Trump is not asking what the problems that need to be solved are and how we can have public investment to solve those problems. He's just kind of throwing money around and imposing tariffs and taking these equity stakes in dismantling things. And voters have noticed. Exit polls from the 2024 election showed that Trump's message on prices resonated deeply with people making under $100,000 and with voters that don't have college degrees. But in the November off-year elections, those same working-class voters turned around and elected Democrats in every single race where they were running, from moderates like Abigail Spanberger to Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Their message? Affordability. Because something real is shifting. Wage growth for low-income Americans is at its lowest in decades. The top 10% of households now accounts for nearly half of all consumer spending. Nearly 93% of all U.S. stock is owned by the wealthiest 20%. And first-time homebuyers, as we talked about earlier, hit an extremely high age and not a good milestone. That's a warning sign. So yes, the holidays are always emotional, but this year they're also a forecast of how many people feel or how people feel about their future and their finances. And maybe, just maybe, what kind of mood they'll be in next time they step into a voting booth. I don't think you can separate.
Before we talk avid Big Ten blood drive ideas, let's get in the competitive spirit with the scavenger hunt. I worked all weekend on that.
Save lives and help win your school $1 million.
Okay, it's in your nature.
Food security is national security. Phosphate powers America's farmers, but global competitors like Russia and China.
I don't think you can separate the feeling that people have about spending, finance, income this Christmas, being 11 months into President Trump's term, and how they're going to feel when they are voting. And I understand the elections earlier this month were not like a major midterm election or a major year where a president's on the ballot, but I think it shows you frustration because maybe President Trump overpromised and underdelivered.
Well, I like some of what Trump is doing. I mean, this is what I always say. I like some of it, and I don't like other aspects of it. You call it freestyle capitalism. The capitalist aspects of the Trump agenda, I agree with. Not all of it is capitalism. Tariffs are not capitalism. Tariffs are the opposite of capitalism. The government taking an ownership stake in certain companies is as far from the opposite of capitalism as you can possibly get. Actually, that's socialism. When the government owns, runs, and centrally plans and manages aspects of the economies, including controlling certain firms, that's just socialism. Capitalism is no, government's hands off, let the firms compete, the best one wins, let trade flourish, let us trade with firms in other countries. That's capitalism. So it's not freestyle capitalism to me. It's the opposite. It's managed trade. It's state capitalism. And state capitalism, another word for that is corporatism, and another word for that is socialism.
Well, the word that we use in comparing President Trump to Mamdani is a great segue because I see that you're comparing the two.
Their economic program
they're similar.
My taste.
That's kind of interesting, but I think when we're talking about the fact of the matter is that perhaps the president was, it's either one or two things. Either he was campaigning on something that he didn't plan to do because the prices are not down, or his policies are so erratic and break away from the traditional norms of the Republican Party that everybody is wholly confused. And it's not a situation where the whole country is suffering together because we're in some state that we can't get out of. It's a situation where rich people are getting really wealthy and more rich. And then poor people are getting more poor and more uncomfortable. And so when I say things to you about, and I know you're about to blow your top over this one, but he's building a $300 million ballroom, and poor people are getting poorer, and we're watching that happen. You cannot be frustrated when I say he's out of touch as a president because he's up in that 1%. But he also of people that he's probably made richer within the last year with his policies. Good that are not.
I hope rich people continue to get richer.
But people in America are suffering. And so what are you doing for the everyday American that voted for you? You can't win with only the rich people voting for you.
Well, the Democratic solution is
the reality of the situation is there's a lot of people that have money in the stock market. If these really wealthy people are making more money because of an appreciation of their stock, guess what? So do the investor class. All right? And this is the reason why there's the haves and the have-nots. The haves and the have-nots are primarily due to ones that have invested and ones that have not.
Just liquidate the billionaire, destroy the billionaires, take from the rich. It's never, let's improve the lives of the, like Elizabeth Warren tweeted something like, you don't hate billionaires enough, or billionaires are afraid of this. This is the Democratic solution. They just want to steal from successful, productive people. They want to take their money. It's not about how can we uplift the poor, it's how can we hurt the rich. Because shrinking the inequality is what matters to the left, not actually improving the material standard.
If the average American
I don't want to shrink the inequality, I want to lift everybody up.
Yes, but if we shrink the inequality, then we can also give people the opportunity to not feel like they're the worst part of society.
They shrink the inequality like this.
Yes.
Now there's very little inequality. And the rich people are a lot worse off, and the poor people are worse off too. I want to do this.
Democrats
I want to do this.
So a lot of Democrats fighting for. You don't have to demonstrate this anymore. We got it. You guys want to zoom in? He's showing us again. I think that what they're go ahead, do your little.
It's hard to do it. Wait. Yeah.
Okay. So the point is.
We do little hand gestures.
If we make sure that we are making opportunities for people that are, let's say, entry-level candidates or people that are low-income earners to earn a fair share, which is what a lot of Democrats are often fighting for higher wages and things like that, then that would mean that maybe the billionaire, 100 billionaire is like a 90 billionaire, but everyone down here is able to make a little bit more to afford groceries and everyday items, and so our society is not in a state of struggle. That means the top 1% will only be gaining all this money with it not trickling down, because a lot of people say and have looked at the trickle-down theory as a failure.
No society that tries to make the poor people better off by mass confiscation or management of the wealthy people's riches succeeds.
It's not confiscation. It's asking people not to take advantage of the lowest paid workers.
Love asking people.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully people will do the right thing. That's true. I live my life with a moral compass. So I'm hoping that people that are 100 millionaires could find an opportunity to take away maybe 10 of those million and try to give
it's not a zero-sum game. It's not
people
a pie that has a finite. We can create more value and more jobs and more opportunities by having the government be more hands-off. And that's what will improve the material living conditions of the poor or of the lower class when there's better job opportunities, better economic opportunities, when the prices of things go down. The price of things usually go down because capitalism is working, because people are competing to offer you a better fridge or a cheaper fridge or a fridge that does more and it improves your life. The fridge costs less than it used to, cars cost less than they used to, TVs cost less than they used to. All those sorts of things, they go down in price, not because the government takes money from some wealthy person and subsidizes making that more expensive.
They also go down in price.
The market competition drives the price.
They also go down in price because of how cheaply they're being made, because companies are so greedy that they'll go to other countries and abuse laborers to make them for extremely cheap prices, then bring them over here. Yes, there's been plenty of, we can talk fast fashion, we can talk about appliances, yes. We go overseas and charge.
Those people are dying, literally dying to get those jobs. They want those jobs because there's so much poverty. They'd rather do them.
No.
Well, then it's the choice. The alternative is starve. Starbucks is apologizing after its new cup got customers worked up into a frenzy. A Starbucks cup? I didn't see this. We'll be right back after this.
All right, let's listen into the weak job signal in Beige Book from the Federal Reserve. All right.
Actually, the possibilities are fairly bimodal. So if you look at the market and what it's priced for several rate cuts next year. But I think either we're going to get one and done because things are stabilizing and growth is going to be okay, and the AI story has enough legs to power the economy, or we're really starting, we're in the early game turning of the labor market. And the Fed's going to have to cut not just to neutral, but through to neutral to an accommodative stance. So it's one or the other, it feels like to me.
You're so good at gaining GDP. My head is spinning. Paul Sweeney's head is spinning over nominal GDP. I got a 4% Atlanta GDP now, maybe it's 3.8%. I got half of America flat on their back. What is the Coronado call for 2026 real and nominal GDP?
So first, if we start with the second half of this year, we have a read on Q3, and by all indications, it's very solid. But early indications are Q4 is that it's kind of squishy. The consumer auto sales have dropped. I'm not sure what Dana told you on the holiday season, but people seem to be price sensitive, price conscious, budget conscious, not hunkered down in a corner, but not booming. And so I think we're going to see strong Q3, subdued Q4. On average, we'll see an economy that is downshifted from last year on balance in 2025. And one of the reasons this is happening is structural. We've chosen a restrictive immigration policy that means basically no labor supply. So no labor supply, no jobs, less growth in paychecks and income, and a slower economy. And I think that will prevail into 2026, a lower trend growth rate for the US, even assuming some solid productivity tailwinds. You're still looking at growth with a one handle, maybe a low two handle, not a three handle.
Julia, so what do you think is receiving the priority from the Federal Reserve these days? The labor market, inflation environment here? Is there one thing that's front and center for the Fed here today?
Well, it depends on who you ask, doesn't it? So there are a lot of people. There's 19 people on the committee, and they all have very different views of the world. It looks like the leadership, Chair Powell, President Williams, are coalescing around one more rate cut this year, an insurance rate cut, because you're highlighting the tension they face. You've got inflation that's not soaring or even necessarily accelerating in a meaningful way like we saw in the pandemic, but it's too high. it's running it closer to 3% than 2%, and it's not making any progress, and we don't expect any progress in the foreseeable future, or at least not next year. Not much progress, given the tariffs are still coming through. And that's a worry, not that inflation's getting out of control, but it's going to get embedded in the economy and people's behavior and people's psychology, and we'll get stuck at 3 and not get to 2. On the other hand, the unemployment rate's been creeping higher by 1/10 each of the last 4 months. Usually when we see this kind of movement, we get a break higher in the unemployment rate. The labor market cracks, we reach a tipping point, and all of a sudden we're looking at a recession.
Can we do a Friday Audible?
Sure.
On television, on radio worldwide with Julia Coronado, a surveillance audible. Okay, Julia, you're defined a Dallas Fed. Dallas Fed owns the southern border. I am as guilty as anyone of ignoring Mexico and focusing on Canada because I need the Montreal Canadiens to find an enforcer. Julia, help me with Mexico and the tariff. What's the dynamic right now with Mexico given tariffs?
Well, you know, Mexico had been poised to be a beneficiary from this friendshoring or these reglobalizations or deglobalizations, in the sense that it's, you know, right next door. It's one of our largest trading partners. But the Trump administration has, you know, gone after our closest trading partners, Canada and Mexico. You know, really kind of trying to ensure that some of that channeling of trade by Chinese companies through Mexico doesn't sort of sneak in the door. But of course, that leaves Mexico really struggling. Mexico's doing okay, but they just put out their growth forecast, and it's pretty subdued for next year. So the trade wars, the immigration policy, the frictions between the U.S. and Mexico are not great for the Mexican economy, and are not great for Texas, to be honest. Texas is okay, but usually Texas is a bright, shining star. I'm living here in Austin, and you know, the Texas economy it's okay, but it's not the bright, shining spot it used to be, because all of these things, the trade wars, the immigration policy, really do hit Texas hard too.
Interesting. We're talking about the unemployment rate. It's at 4.4%, I believe, right here. Is there a number, Julia, where the Fed just says, "Oh boy, we've got a labor problem"?
5.5.
Well, I think, you know, we're above their longer run estimate of 4.2%. I think once we start heading north of 4.5, and it's not just the level matters. So I think we're at a level that's
5.5 is the
When
problem.
we saw the unemployment rate rising last summer, we were rising from such a low level that it was kind of hard to worry too much about it, right? We were going from 3.4 to the low 4s. That was sort of more of a normalization in conditions than a weakening. Now we're at the low 4s. We're at sort of neutral or longer run, and we're rising.
Think about it. As more baby boomers start to retire, and those positions that they're retiring out of are not being rehired, not refilled. All right. And you have a new crop of graduates coming into the job market that aren't getting employed, and that unemployment rate is ticking up with new grads out of college in April of next year. You're looking at a slow tick up of unemployment. And if we're at 4.4 and you have more individuals getting out of the job market because they're retiring, they're baby boomers, and those positions are no longer filled, and the number of jobs are slowly starting to go down, the new crop of people coming out of college, they're not getting hired. They tick up to instead of 4.4, you're going to start seeing 4.5, 4.7. And then people are going to be complaining that they have to pay for their college education, right? They're suppressing their consumption, and forecasts for sales start to go down, and then there's further decline in new hiring. or maybe even some layoffs that take place, and then it'll tick up until instead of 4.7, it'll go to 4.95 into the end of the year, and then you go into 2027, and then all of a sudden you start seeing you're getting above the 5 mark and inching towards 5.5. This coincides, what we're seeing right now coincides with what I was saying, that on September 11th of 2026, there will be a curse in the world because of the fracturing of society, that people cannot get along. And it's at all levels: religious fraction, political fraction, it's socioeconomic, doesn't matter what it is. There's just so much strife, so much hate, so much conflict, that there's going to be a curse it's a worldly curse. And how do you get people to capitulate? You take away their means of livelihood. That's what's going to happen. It's going to start on September 11th of 2026. And it's going to go into 2027 through October of 2027. And we're starting to see the beginnings of this happening right now.
Labor market that's clearly loosening. If you look at, like, say, the Conference Board survey of consumers, consumers are getting gloomy about the labor market. If you look at nominal wage growth, the Indeed wage tracker is what we have on the most timely basis, showing wage growth decelerating below the rate of inflation. These are indications that the labor market is not just balanced, but weak.
She's got me going here. Okay, I mean, Tom Purcell's over at Pigeon. You know, even in the cold weather, he takes the Hinkley boat down the Hudson River to go to Pigeon in Jersey City. Okay, you just said it, Julia. The real wage is flatlining, declining, however you want to describe it as well. You're telling me the Fed is going to look at that and ignore it to worry about inflation dynamics? I don't buy it for a minute.
No, and you shouldn't, because if this continues, then the Fed will cut, and it will cut in December. It's poised to cut in December for exactly that reason.
So as the economy starts to falter, and you have unemployment starting to tick up, Federal Reserve starts to lower rates. It tries to stimulate the economy, but the jobs aren't there. And usually you want to tighten. You want to increase your rates to cut inflation, but they're lowering them. They're lowering rates, so inflation is going to go up. So you're going to start seeing in 2026, inflation ticking up, unemployment ticking up, and a curse is starting to emerge. How are you going to get out of an economy that is higher inflation and higher unemployment? It's hard. It's hard to get out of that. It's easy to get out of low inflation, high unemployment, or high inflation and high employment. The curse is starting to emerge.
We saw the September labor report. We said going in, the most important number is the unemployment rate. Forget payrolls. They're overstated. They haven't been benchmarked, blah, 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 seasonal noise. Look at the unemployment rate, and it went up, and nobody expected it to go up. So that was the news. The news was the labor market is weakening. The Fed is a go. And that looks to be where they've landed. And yeah, I think, Tom, that the trick is the committee is in such a hawkish mood because the GDP tracking is so strong and the economy seems basically okay. The stock market's at the highs. So what's the big deal? Meanwhile, I've got an inflation problem. But if this labor market problem keeps creeping in and those cracks keep deepening, of course the Fed is going to pay attention to that.
Joy is
very hard to come by whenever you're going through something like this.
All right, so what we're going to do now is play a CNN clip talking about Zelensky's top advisor resigning. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the drops. These are made from structural nanosilver. If you have a throat irritation, take them right away to mitigate that throat irritation. Super important during the winter season and also the allergy season in the spring. And get some of these for a stocking stuffer for gifts. Be prepared. Get a few bags for your household and for work. The moment you have that throat irritation, take the drops. They work very effectively. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the honey and lemon, also the cherry flavor, and get the blueberry. Very high quality. Get a few bags for your household. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Be prepared for the winter season. And get some gifts. Get some supplements from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get people to start thinking about their health, slow down the aging process, and boost up that immune system. All right, let's listen to CNN.
Coming on one of the top stories that we've been following here, and that is the investigation or the raid on the home of President Zelensky's chief of staff. Nick Walsh here with more. Nick, what have you been learning in the last few minutes?
Well, it is certainly, I think, a seismic piece of political news for the embattled administration of President Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, hours after his top chief of staff, his top negotiator, Andrei Yermak's home and office was raided by anti-corruption negotiators, which point out they didn't immediately emerge and said they found anything, and they apparently acted without impediment. But Andrei Yermak, the second most powerful politician in that government, has submitted his resignation. This has happened in just the last minutes, but Volodymyr Zelensky himself has said, "I want no one to have any questions about Ukraine today. We have the following internal decisions. First, there will be a reboot of the office of the President of Ukraine. The head of the office, Andrei Yermak, has written a letter of resignation." Now, I should point out that over the last 3.5 years, there's been quite a churn inside Kiev's cabinet, Zelensky's cabinet. Many top officials in many roles have changed. There's been a lot of cabinet reshuffle. But the departure of Yermak, the timing so closely associated with this raid, is clearly a reflection of the pressure that Zelensky has found himself under. We've heard from European allies consistently sounding the need for caution when it comes to corruption. This is becoming, I think, a distraction from the message Zelensky is trying to put out about unity around whatever demands diplomatically will be made of Ukraine. And of course, it's very complex for Ukraine in a moment like this to have its peace negotiations led by a man who's had investigators in his own home a matter of hours later. So a moment, I think, of extraordinary complexity for President Zelensky here. Clearly, the decision has been made that they need to try and turn the page, but whatever comes now in this corruption investigation must be distanced from the Zelensky administration. But ultimately, too, this, some argues, potentially puts President Zelensky closer into the firing line. There's no buffer between him and the outside world now, were the investigation to expand in any way further at all. And clearly, Zelensky felt or Yermak felt the need to act here, and that's something his opponents, and certainly Moscow, will seize upon, Becky.
Our best hits on drums are here. Go acoustic with $250 off PDP by DW, or plug in with $150 off Alesis. Grab them before prices go up and shop Black Friday.
Yeah, and that's what we've got to talk about. Where does this leave talks, the prospect for peace at this point? We've got a US drafted plan doing rounds. What's your sense, Nick?
Look, I mean, the entirety of the negotiation team was not just Andrei Yermak. He led it, but there was Rustem Umerov. There are plenty of others who can continue the work. So I think it's important not to overemphasize quite what this does to Ukraine's negotiating strategy, the ultimate decisions of which will be made by Zelensky anyway. But you do have a credibility issue when you have a change of key negotiator this deep into this kind of process. It is certainly something the Russians will seize upon. They've already been pointing towards the legitimacy of the Ukrainian government, saying Putin that they cannot sign agreements with Russia because they haven't had elections recently. They will pick upon this too. Let me add into this as well. I am grateful to add his words of President Zelensky. I'm grateful to Andrei for always representing Ukraine's position in the negotiation track exactly as it should be. There's always been a patriotic position, but I want there to be no rumors or speculation. As for now, the new head of the office tomorrow, I will hold consultations with those who could lead this institution. So swiftly moving to try and replace Yermak there. But as we're just saying, we are in the days ahead going to see a new set of negotiation rounds between the Americans and the Ukrainians, and which I think it's fair to say most analysts anticipate the Trump administration will say, the deal we're currently offering to the Russians looks likely it's not going to be accepted by Vladimir Putin, judging by his remarks just yesterday, and potentially pressure Kiev to concede more, possibly some kind of territory. The change in their casting, their staffing of this negotiating team will be key in terms of how credibly Ukraine's able to hold that particular pressure off. And then, of course, separately, early next week, we have Steve Witkoff, President Trump's envoy to this particular conflict, going to Moscow to potentially lay out the proposal which was put together by the US and Ukraine. We know pretty much already that Vladimir Putin is going to reject it. He said yesterday he wants the land that he says Ukraine is holding. He means basically the rest of Donbass, as far as we know from what seems to be percolating from these discussions, or he said he'll take it militarily. So this Moscow visit by Witkoff didn't seem to have particularly positive prospects, but I think now we will see further pressure placed upon Kiev because of this wound now they've had to suffer. Possibly Yermak moving on to remove distractions from what Zelensky's been trying to achieve, or possibly because more was to emerge. We simply don't know, but I think this is the first time we've seen this corruption scandal, the damage it's done to Zelensky domestically, hard, I think, to overstate. You know, he was roughly impregnable, some might say, to all the travails of war, the demands made on the Ukrainian population to give their men up to the front lines and their women as well. But this corruption scandal hit at the heart of an issue so close to so many Ukrainians, not just corruption and how it's blighted Ukrainian society for decades, but energy. That's where the kickbacks were paid in the sector of, and energy blackouts are something that's blighting Ukrainians now because of the Russian onslaught. So a deeply problematic moment here for President Zelensky, and clearly here a move that I think they hope will draw a line under it. Does it instead add fuel to the fire? We'll have to see in the days ahead, but it's not going to make these negotiations any easier.
Ambassador, always good to talk to you. So, as Nick was just noting, Andrei Yermak was
God, I can't stand those glasses that women wear. Oh my God, I hate that 1970 look. Fuck. There's two eras in modern American design that really suck: the 60s and the 70s. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and please get the C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. One molecule of C60, 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach. If you work out, take it before you work out so you recover quicker and soak up those free radicals that you're generating. But how C60 works is that a C60 molecule will neutralize multiple free radicals because of the way the electron valence shell is on a carbon molecule. And by neutralizing those free radicals, the health of your tissue and your cells improves. To bringing down inflammation and soaking up those free radicals. That will allow for your mitochondria to be healthier and produce more ATP so you'll have more energy. When those cells and tissues have more energy, they perform better. That means your organ systems will perform better, your immune system will perform better, your endocrine system, even your brain function. And soaking up free radicals at the vascular level is going to reduce plaque formation. And at the brain function level, by soaking up free radicals at the neuron, you're reducing the stress on the neuron, you're maintaining the myelin sheath, you're improving the positive neuroplasticity between the neurons, so you're thinking better, and you're going to have more ATP because the mitochondria in the neuron will be healthier to be able to produce, your neurons will be able to produce those neurotransmitters. You'll have lots of ATP. You need lots of ATP to run your neurons. Your energy starts to go down, the health of your neuron, the health of your mitochondria starts to go down, and then all of a sudden your neurons start to decline. If your neuron has less ATP, less healthy mitochondria, it's not producing the neurotransmitters, and when it's not producing the concentration of neurotransmitters that you need for cognition, then you start to see your dendritic connections to recede, and you start to slow down your thinking, your memory starts to decline. But if you improve the neuron, reduce the stress, increase the health of the mitochondria, produce higher levels of ATP, you're going to improve those neural connections, and your thinking will improve, your memory will improve. C60 is very important to take. It's a cornerstone of my anti-aging protocol. And C60 will also improve the basal layer of your skin. So your skin over time will look more rejuvenated. If you take C60, you'll start to feel the effects in 2 months. You'll have more energy, more vitality, your immune system will be better, your endocrine system will be better, cognition will be better. After 1 year, you'll have additional benefits like I just mentioned, but you will also see a visible difference between your before and after picture. You will look younger by taking C60, a teaspoon a day, every day for 1 year. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this every day, teaspoon a day. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and avocado oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And I can't stand this 1970 glasses for a women look. God, it's just so 70s.
Man leading Ukraine's negotiations here. So how does this complicate these negotiations now?
Well, we will see. It's right. We will see over the next month or so. But Andriy Yermak was a controversial person. He was controversial domestically in Ukraine. He was controversial internationally among observers. So this may, in some sense, help Zelensky move forward on this. As Nick points out, Zelensky wants to draw a line under this investigation. He has fired a couple of ministers, and now he's accepted the resignation of another person apparently implicated. So Zelensky is trying to put that behind him. No one has accused Zelensky of any of those kinds of problems. And as I say, Yermak had his own set of detractors.
So when we look at where things stand, then sort of with the big unknown over the developments just earlier today, Yermak had told The Atlantic Ukraine would never see territory to Russia as part of a peace deal, saying, "quote, not a single sane person today would sign a document to give up territory." This has always been an understandable contention in any of these negotiations. Of course, that 28-point plan had Ukraine ceding territory that Russia didn't even occupy, which of course was a non-starter. How much of the focus, right, or how high on the list, I should say, is this idea of territory at this point as Ukraine moves forward to try to get something done?
Very high, Erica, very high. It's right up there, the top couple of issues. And Yermak is right, and Zelensky has made the same exact point. That is, Ukrainians are not going to give up legal claim to all of their territory, all of the 1991 borders. They will acknowledge, that the Russians occupied, what you're showing there, that shown in red is 19% of Ukraine's territory is occupied right now. That's a fact by the Russians. That's a fact. They will acknowledge that fact. They will not give up claim. They will not acknowledge that the Russians own that, nor should anyone else, nor should the Americans, nor should the Europeans, and the Ukrainians will never give up claim to that territory.
There has been an ongoing discussion for some time now about what it is that would actually get Moscow to budge a little bit, to concede something, because the concessions have largely come or been asked of the Ukrainians at this point. There is, depending on who you talk to, some evidence that sanctions may be having an impact. But I was speaking earlier with Colonel Cedric Layton, who said he really felt it was only the presence of troops, maybe NATO troops, that would really push Russia in that direction. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think there are military things to be done and economic things to be done to put pressure on Putin to realize, to acknowledge that he can't win on the ground. But the military, I mean, Colonel Layton's exactly right. It has to be a military. It's long-range weapons. It's Tomahawk missiles from the United States. It's probably European troops on the ground in Ukraine to be sure that the Russians don't attack again. And then it is also important to put those sanctions on, squeeze the revenues going into the Russian economy.
We are out of time, but just a yes or no if you can. Do you think we are getting closer to a place where there could be a deal?
Nope. I do. I think it's because the Europeans and the Ukrainians and the Americans are now agreed on the 19-point plan, not the 28-point plan that the Russians wrote and liked, but on the 19-point plan, there's unity.
All right, we'll be watching for it. And that's
Something's going to happen and it's not going to work out. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients, has a very complex, comprehensive compound profile, and it targets multiple systems. It'll target brain function, target your cardiovascular health. It'll help with increasing your energy levels and revving up your metabolism, helping with your musculature, help with your immune system, and help with your endocrine system, slow down the aging process. This stuff is super important to take every day. This is a month's supply. And the best way to take this is to take it with, you can take it by itself. You can take it with Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. You can also take it with my core protocol, which is the multivitamin, the probiotic, max 30 fiber cleanse, C60, the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and then stack it with the Boomer Boost. That's a super stack to slow down the aging process. All right? You do that every day, and you're going to be pretty healthy. All right? But if you can't afford that, or you don't want to take all those supplements, you'll get a lot of benefit from taking Boomer Boost. It's a very comprehensive compound profile. Take a scoop a day, mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, or even just a smoothie, but take it every day. I mix it in soft foods like hummus. You can mix it with applesauce. You can mix it with yogurt. It's a great supplement to take. But if you put it in my core protocol that I just mentioned, you're going to get some major benefits on boosting up your immune system, revving up your cellular metabolism, increasing your musculature, helping the health of your mitochondria. These are all super important to slow down the aging process. Because when you think about people that are aging, what happens? They lose bone density, they lose muscle mass, they lose brain function. This is going to help with your brain function. The health of their mitochondria starts to go down. Their ATP levels start to go down. But if you listen to what I just mentioned on how to improve your health, you're revving up your metabolism. You're boosting up the health of your mitochondria. You're increasing your ATP. You're adding musculature. You're adding bone density. You're helping with brain function and cardiovascular health. And so you're attacking all the vectors of aging. So you're going to slow down the aging process. And so by the time you get older, you will be healthier. You'll be using less health care. It'll be cheaper for you. And you're getting those if you start now, you're getting those benefits, those compound benefits as you get into your geriatric years. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. All right, we're going to play one more video dealing with retailers not capturing consumers with social media will miss their interest. All right, let's see here. See what she has to say. She's usually on Bloomberg, but she's on CNBC today.
And Dan Telsey's here. It is Black Friday.
Much cheerier, though.
Shoppers are hunting for the best deals. Joining us right now is Dana Telsey, Telsey Advisory Group CEO and Chief Research Manager. And Dana, I would guess it's a little tougher to know exactly what's happening on Black Friday morning than it used to be. So many of the retailers actually close on Thursdays now instead of staying open that entire time. You're trying to figure out what's happening from the cyber perspective, which is tougher than going to the mall and maybe doing bag counts along the way. What do you think right now about where the American consumer stands?
I think overall, what we've seen so far, given a bunch of third quarter earnings have been reported, more still to come, there's been resilience. And frankly, surprisingly, when you have companies like Gap talking about strength across all income cohorts, typically you hear about the pressure on the lower income consumer and the resilience of the higher end consumer. But one of the things companies, particularly just on the discretionary side, have done is newness and product innovation, collaborations, Taco Bell and Hollister, Rough Shack Fancy and Victoria's Secret. We've had Martha Stewart at American Eagle Outfitters. So you've had newness in order to drive interest and demand. But definitely that lower income consumer, they are more pressured. There's a reason why. Where's the traffic been? Look what Walmart has said. Walmart's getting more higher income growth. And you're also seeing the off-pricers, whether it's TJX and Ross, talking about its traffic strength. So I think there's cautious optimism for holiday. We've got a long way to go. And as you said, it's not like it used to be. 6 a.m., Macy's is open, Best Buy is open, but really it's 9 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. that is holiday hours on Black Friday today.
You know, that is a surprising thing that it's not one class of the retailers that are doing well. This definitely feels like an operator's market where you have to have the right strategy and you're going to see some real winners.
Yes, it's not the same for everyone. At the same time, the marketing's different, social media marketing, TikTok, Instagram stories, you got to show up. Also, you're thinking about what consumers are doing with newness to their wardrobe. Definitely, it's not just leggings like in the past. It's denim jeans with embellishment and rhinestone. And look at the casual chef boots at Steve Madden that's showing up with brown suede, and we're lucky it got cooler outside.
So the ones who have particularly done well versus those who have not, maybe focus on who's losing in this market.
Well, we've had companies where the transformations are just beginning. I mean, Bath and Body Works is typically a holiday winner. When they project a high single-digit decline for holiday 2025, that's not winning, and the new CEO is first beginning his strategy. You thought that department stores, I mean, it was a huge surprise on Kohl's. What that could mean for Macy's when they report next week could certainly be a positive. The statistic that 40% of Macy's product for holiday is new, that newness matters, and that's different. That should be encouraging. But if you're not capturing that consumer with social media newness, you're not gonna be in the mind of the consumer today.
I'm glad you're not using the word choiceful. That is a word that I can't stand the word. It seems to be what everyone's talking about, but it does refer to the price sensitivity. And so what are you seeing in terms of price promotion, and how much margin room do a lot of these retailers have given what's happening with tariffs, given what's happening in the supply chain? Will there even be much room for price promotion?
So a couple things. I think companies, they're being very mindful of promotions. It seems like as the holiday season goes on, consumers are waiting for more promotions. Even Urban Outfitters talked about that the other day. But overall, and keep in mind, I like going to stores. I like seeing things. I was walking everywhere, taking my pictures, compared it to last year. The promotions this year so far are similar to last year. Do they have room to take price?
Yep.
They do. And we've been having this price tracker of 80 items since April, given tariffs and the whole tariff environment. Yes, you do see selective price increases, more probably coming. But overall, whether it's 30 or 40% off, that's where you're seeing the promotional spigot. And it's not scary. It's something that retailers are managing. inventory levels for the most part, they're wearing down from the lower priced items before tariffs. That remains to be seen as we go through 2026.
As she's talking, I'm looking at a email, all right? And I'm seeing from Macy's Black Friday up to 60% off. All right? And once you get like mid-December, Macy's is going to start bringing down even more of they're going to try to bring down their prices even more. I'll tell you, there's serious discounts out there if you look for them. But the question is do people have the money to buy? And I think there is a big part of society that's strapped. Now, what's interesting here is that, okay, holiday shopping at a glance, top items, clothing and accessories, 76%. Hey, zoom this in. Electronics, 56%. Toys and hobbies, 52%. Gift cards, 51%. Home and kitchen, 38%. Food and beverage, 34%. Health and wellness, 32%. And pet products, 27%. So the bulk of the shopping it's about clothes and electronics and hobbies and toys.
But even the higher end items, if it's something new that people don't have, they'll buy them. Essentials are where everyone is making sure they have enough opening price point goods. And I agree with you. I'm sick of the word choiceful.
The holiday season means a house full of people all up in your internet. But with 100% fiber optic internet from Verizon Fios, they won't slow you down no matter what you're doing.
All right. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. If you like the content I provide, please go to my store. Help support the work by getting the great products I have. I have great supplements that will improve your health. If you stack them the way I tell you to, and you take them regularly, you will slow down the aging process and get healthy. I also have ebooks and course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can learn from. All these videos I do are for free. Please help support the work I do by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website, on the homepage. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon and Substack channel. There's many ways to follow my work. I put all these videos out there for free. You can also listen to audio files on Apple Podcast, Podomatic, and on my website under broadcast, under audio, or under the live stream. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. And by the way, stop Marxism.